Thank you. All right, I apologize for the delay, the wonders of technology. And as we try to do this as a virtual and in-person event, obviously we're doing things on Zoom as well. So we've been able to, I think, thanks to the technicians' help, be able to get everything working right. Everybody should be able to hear us online and be able to see us here in the room. So I will get us started again a little bit late, but nonetheless. So I want to welcome everybody to this in person and on Zoom this afternoon to the NCCCO's Foundation's 7th Annual Industry Forum on Personnel Qualifications. You don't need to adjust your eyes or your ears. I don't have a British accent, and I'm also not over 6 feet tall. My name is TJ Cantwell. I am the new executive director of the foundation. I had the honor of taking over the foundation after Graham Brent, who I'm sure all of you know, retired earlier this year. So I'm going to do my best today to fill his large shoes as your host and MC. So this is our 7th annual industry forum, our second one that's hybrid. We are going to have people that are going to be speaking both in person and online today. So please bear with us if we have any other technical difficulties. We'll do our best to get those resolved as soon as we can and stay on time as much as possible. But as you can see, it'll just depend on technical things and how long people are run. But we're going to be working together with the techs here as well as NCCCO staff. Right now we have Bailey Tinkle, who is managing the online attendee issues. So if you have any issues going forward, you can email her. Hopefully you got that in your email if you're online. We also have Bob Mallman, who's going to be managing any of the online Q&A and in-person Q&A, and I'll go over that in a second. And Brittany Miller is going to be tasked with trying to keep us, all the people that are going to be on stage today, keep us on time with the time cards, et cetera, especially for those who are speaking in person today. We have an exciting lineup of educational sessions that hopefully provide you with the tools and information that you need to apply in your professional activities. I just want to go over a couple of quick housekeeping items. As I mentioned, Bailey Tinkle is going to be managing any of the technical issues online. So if you have problems seeing us, hearing us, etc., please email her at the email on the screen. If you're in person, please sign in if you haven't already. There are some sheets out on the table in the hallway. There'll probably be some sheets going around the room as well. Please sign in, put your name and everything. We want to make sure we capture everybody who's here today. And make sure to ask questions. So if you are online, you can use the Q&A function. You'll put any of your questions in there online, and then Bob is going to read those out if we have time after every presentation. If not, we're going to have a Q&A session at the very end. So you'll be able to also put those questions in beforehand. If you're in person, you can either wait till the Q&A session for the in-person speakers. We're going to have that at the end. There'll be somebody walking around with a microphone, or as you said, you can submit your questions on a piece of paper. There's a couple, I think, floating around here, but if you just want to put it on any piece of paper, you can also submit it to Bob. He's back in the room right next to Bailey she just raised her hand. She's got red on. So again, that's the best way to ask questions. We probably run short on time after every presentation, so maybe we get 1 or 2 in after every presentation, but again, please do ask questions. If we don't get to them, I promise we will submit them to the speakers afterwards to try to get your answers. After the forum, you're going to also receive an evaluation form, so via email, so please make sure to give us your feedback so we can help to improve for the future. And then finally, you are being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, especially if you're online, but even if you're here in person, we've got a live stream going on, then you shouldn't be in the room because we are going to record it and then you're going to be able to send it out to everybody else afterwards. And so a good thing is to be able to also get a record of this for those who can't attend the entire meeting. So thanks for being here for your support. We do have a long list of speakers, as you know, with a lot of excellent information. So I'm not going to go through the full program. Hopefully you received it via email. It's available online on our website. If you don't have that right in front of you, there are some paper copies that are floating around that you can also take a look at. And I do want to mention we are going to have a break about halfway through, approximately around 3 o'clock, hopefully, if we can, again, stay on time. So let's get started. Our first speaker It's my honor and my pleasure today to introduce and welcome back for the fourth time to the Industry Forum, the OSHA Director of the Director of the OSHA Directorate of Construction, Scott Ketchum. For many of you, Mr. Ketchum needs no introduction, but for the rest, I'll just provide just a quick one. Scott Ketchum has served as the director of OSHA's Director of Construction since 2019, and was previously the DOC's deputy director. Ketchum also served as an OSHA acting deputy regional administrator, area director, assistant area director, and compliance officer and manager in regions across the U.S. He was a staff industrial hygienist with the U.S. Army for 5 years in Alaska, and retired after 24 years after active reserve service. Mr. Ketchum holds an MPA in Business Administration and Management from the University of Alaska and a BS from Texas A&M University. Director Ketchum flew all the way from DC to speak with us today, to be here in person after several years of not being able to come. And will also be participating in the Q&A panel at the end of the day. So please give a warm welcome to Director Ketchum. Thank you.
Wow, it's good to be here in front of a live audience. And I know many of you from my previous visits. I can tell you I came here because I wanted to. I like talking to the crane community. And I like CCO. I really like working with CCO. Earlier this year, I gave a similar presentation, similar to what I'm going to give today, to the SCNRA. And you know, there are some things that have developed since I spoke to the SCNRA, and one of the things that I'm going to talk to you about is our new Crane Operator Certification and Evaluation Directive, which is important. It came out 1 week after the SCNRA conference, so I had to preface a little bit. I couldn't say what was in it until it had actually hit the mainstream, but it's out there now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it today, and I'll take some questions on it as well. First, I want to thank everyone here for what you do every day to keep workers safe. I'm honored to be here to talk about safety today. Obviously, I've been doing it for quite some time. I was counting the years. It's 29 years this month that I've been working in safety and health, either with the Army or with OSHA. 26 of those years are with OSHA. And I've learned quite a bit along the way, and just going off a little bit from my presentation, I just wanted to say that many moons ago, when I was young, I started off with a love of heavy equipment from driving pieces of heavy equipment while I was in the Army, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and other equipment that I really enjoyed. So the love of tracked vehicles and heavy equipment has always been with me, but also respect for that piece of equipment. You know, if it's not handled with precision or handled professionally, can cause dramatic effects. And I've seen some of those things in my time as driving heavy equipment in the Army, armored tracked equipment. And so I understand what crane operators do when they're operating equipment, and the need for safety when you're operating that equipment. It's always been close to my heart when it comes to talking about safety, especially about equipment. Have a definite interest in that. So without any further ado, I'm going to try to catch up a little bit here on time so that I don't go over and I don't get the hook pulling me off stage here. Normally I can take up to an hour, but I'm going to do this in 35 minutes or less. So that's my agenda. I'm going to start off a little bit about infrastructure, our inspection stats, our rulemaking updates, cranes in construction. I'm going to talk a little bit about suicide in construction and substance abuse and things that are affecting worker safety out there involving those issues. A little bit about our HEAT campaign, and then close it up with projects that the Directorate of Construction is working on. So a little bit about the infrastructure bill. All of you know that late last year, in the last months of 2021, Congress passed the infrastructure bill that basically authorized expenditures of up to $850 billion in heavy construction activities that are going to be parsed out over between 5 and 7 years. That's quite a bit of money. I've been around the Department of Labor for quite some time, and I was here during when I wasn't in the Directorate of Construction, but I was out in the field when the Obama administration passed an infrastructure bill as well, which too did about $600 billion, but it didn't really go to heavy construction activities. This one, I've read the bill, not the whole thing, but I've read a good portion of it, and I will say that a good amount of it is going to infrastructure improvements, civil projects, and things that will definitely cause expenditures in the construction, heavy civil operations, and things like roads, bridges, airports, railways, you name it. And this is a huge expenditure that is going to be built out over time. And the department and OSHA's position on that is we want them to be good jobs, but we want them to be safe jobs. So we are working with the other departments within the executive branch to try to figure out how to best get information out to people that will help them take these bids and bid on them with safety in the bid. And so we're looking forward to working with our other executive branches to assist in putting OSHA and our consultation and outreach offices into their planning when they're giving these bids so that we get good, safe jobs. That's our overall goal with this. So one of the things that we've really been concentrating on in this last year has been the Focus 4. Unfortunately, these 4 hazards account for over 60% of all fatalities in the construction industry trades. Falls, struck by, electrocutions, and caught betweens account for, as I said, over 65% of the fatal injuries in the construction industry trades. It's been that way for a while, and we have been focusing on these efforts for many years, but we're really bringing it back to light, and we're going to really highlight it with this infrastructure bill. We really think that if you study the research that is out there in regarding to things that hurt or kill construction operations and construction workers, these Focus 4 issues are at the bottom line of many of the things that lead to the incidents that we're looking at. And falls, as you can see there, account for almost 35% of all fatal incidents across the nation. When you add in general industry and maritime to that, it's approximately 45% of all fatalities in the nation are related to falls from height. It's tragic and it is alarming. But right behind that is struck by. And many of these hazards, these Focus 4 hazards, are relevant to the lifting industry. And these are things that you will see out there while we're doing heavy construction operations. And as I said, heavy equipment vehicles moving around people. These things are ever more important for us to be aware of and trying to mitigate in the workplace. So one of the things that we're doing is we're getting information out electronically, and we're going to give presentations like I'm giving right now to you to get the word out there on how people can behave safely, operate safely, and get these monies, get these jobs out there and do them in such a manner where we can operate safely and get good jobs out there as well. This webpage that we designed here is for people who are new to the industry. We know that when big bills like this come out, from our experience, that there will be newcomers into the industry. People will want to be able to take advantage of expanding opportunities in the construction industry trade. So our infrastructure safety and health page is a good way for people who are newer to the industry who come in to catch up on the things that are important in the construction industry when it comes to construction safety and health. Now, one thing that is on this slide that I wanted to talk to you about is we are vetting things from our external partners. So safety and health programs, example, road and bridge safety programs, things that are relevant to cranes and whatnot, we will have on from our external partners who are providing this. For some of you who are aware of the Advisory Committee for Construction Safety and Health, both union and employer side are engaged on reaching out to industries to give best practices to us that we will vet and we'll put up on these web pages as well. Now, we're also putting money into consultation resources for our construction consultation side that will be going out to smaller companies. And if you're wondering what is a smaller company, 250 or less is what the federal government calls a smaller entity. So we know that in the construction industry, there are some large construction companies, but the vast majority of construction companies are smaller. So there's going to be money out there for consultation visits to get these employers and their workers trained up on the safety and health aspects of doing the infrastructure work. So a little bit about our work that we do day to day. You know, I think I mentioned to you last year, even during the pandemic, I can tell you I haven't worked I worked certainly hard, but in a different way during the pandemic, but we were out there. OSHA was out there doing inspections during the pandemic and under pretty rough conditions, especially since vaccines and things like that were not out while we were out doing our inspections. And the construction industry was out there working too as essential workers. So it's important to commend the industry for the work you did during those rough times. But I would say that we ourselves went out there and did quite a bit as well. But this is generally what we're looking at in the strata of OSHA's work. About 50% of all of our inspection, all of our resources go into inspecting construction work sites. So if you look at it roughly, the construction industry trades make up about 10 or 12%, depending on how you look at the BLS trade numbers, 10% to 12% of the overall industry, but OSHA spends a good amount of our time looking at the construction industry because the rates are significantly higher in both injuries and illnesses and death in the construction trades. So we spend quite a bit of our resources in looking at the construction industry to make sure that we're doing the consultation side and we're doing the enforcement side that's needed to make sure everyone is following the rules to keep people safe. I don't think I want to cover anything else about that other than 1,136 fatalities is 1,136 too many. That's what we covered last year. And that's our fiscal year through September 30th. But last year, there were 1,136 workers who died on the job. A reminder of why safety is important. They all had families. You know, I can assure you, we all feel that when someone is lost in the workplace. And we certainly feel it. I can tell you, having been a compliance officer and investigated at least 50 or 75 fatal investigations myself, it's felt by us when we see that. The top things that we're finding out in the construction industry trades in this last year are listed here. I'm not going to go through all of them. Y'all can read and you're going to get the slides. But what I would say, which is concerning to me, is looking at the Focus 4. If you look at that list, you can see a lot of the Focus 4 on there. Fall protection, ladders, scaffolding, a lot of fall prevention type things. Fall protection systems, excavations, caught in between. You know, if you didn't know how BLS classifies that, when they classify an excavation cave-in, and I'm going to talk a little bit about excavations because crane operators may be engaged in excavation operations by putting equipment in line and whatnot, and so you may see these types of things. So I added a few excavation slides in here as well, but excavation requirements also are very important, and so important that, you know, this year, I'm going to talk about it later on in my presentation, but there was a steep rise in the number of cave-in fatalities in trenching, which is probably one of the most visible hazards when you're out on a construction site. I mean, it's something that is well known to protect workers when they're down in a excavation, that it needs to be sloped, short, or benched. But yet, 28 workers died just this last year in excavations that were not meeting those specs. A little bit about our construction regulatory activities. I'm going to breeze through this real quick. More than likely, you're probably more interested in crane amendments, which is clarification of subpart CC. That has been ongoing since CC came out in 2010. The amendments, otherwise known as the amendments to the crane standard, is now in clearance. Hopefully, we will have that rulemaking out, which clarifies quite a bit of questions that were asked of OSHA after the crane standard came out. We put out through letters of interpretation or whatnot. It's codifying them into actually part of subpart CC. We're also adding some definitions and clarifying some definitions that many construction crane stakeholders had asked us about in the definitions within Subpart CC. So hopefully we're looking forward to getting that out here early in 23. It may be moved back. Right now, I think some of you may be aware that we're working on a COVID rule. Finalizing the COVID rule is taking quite a bit of resources, so that date may, that's what's in the Federal Register right now, but it may get moved back just a little bit. Also, PPE in construction. All the other standards within OSHA's regulatory authorities have a requirement that PPE must fit the worker in order to protect them, with one exception: construction. So we are modifying, we are clarifying for PPE in construction rulemaking that when a worker is assigned PPE, it must fit. It must fit them in order to protect them. It sounds like a simple nuance, but we had to go through rulemaking in order to make it happen. And we got comments from workers and stakeholders on the clarification of PPE and its requirements. And it sounds like it was a long drawn out affair. It's been on our agenda now for the last 2.5 years. I'm going to finalize it here real soon. It's going through OIRA review or OMB review right now, and hopefully you'll see a final rule out on that here coming up in the spring. A little bit about our crane directive update. As I said, I just spoke to the SCNRA in April, and this came out in May. It's clarifying what the standard for certification and operator certification and what it means. And it's also clarifying how we're going to tell our COSHOs, our compliance officers, on how to do inspections and verify that an operator is indeed certified and that it's further validated by the employer. It's designed for OSHA enforcement personnel, but I found that many crane organizations are very interested in it because you're interested. I know CCO is interested in this because it spells out how we work with states, state licensures and things like that, and what OSHA will accept. So there's quite a bit in it. If you have not looked at it since it came out in May, it's a really definitive directive on how OSHA compliance officers are going to be looking at the evaluation side, especially, and the certification of operators. And generally, it gives the operator certification inspections part of our broader inspections. So, you know, as we're inspecting crane operations, we are going to be focusing on the operator and looking at operators and asking them questions. Now, one thing I will tell you is that one thing that OSHA is doing is we're trying to grow our capabilities, especially in crane operations. We've recently, over the past 3 years, we have lost, due to retirements, quite a bit of people who had specialized experience in cranes. And we're working right now to build up capacity, technical capacity, to be able to have inspectors, compliance officers that actually have the skill sets to know what they're looking at when they're looking at a crane. And I will say, Tom, I'm saying this to Tom Gordon here, we're working with the IUOE in providing us some training and regarding our compliance staff. We're going to be starting some overall crane operations training down in Crosby, Texas, just to start out. And Tom, I'm appreciative of your help as well with that. I point out you both. We're working with the IUOE, and this all started as a relationship that was built here with the CCO. And I got to say, those kind of things are important. You know, we all have needs. You know, OSHA has needs. We're asked to do quite a bit. You know, one day we might be inspecting a crane. The next day we might be out at a computer chip plant. You know, so we're asked to fill a lot of different roles. I'll just say that. And to know all the technical roles is something that is challenging, to say the least. But we're building up a cadre of compliance officers that we hope to train, build up the skill set so that they can train other people, and then continue this on with many other stakeholders to make sure that we build up that capacity when we're looking at heavy equipment, whether it be cranes or excavation equipment or dozers or whatnot, that we know what we're talking about and that we're making the effects that we need to do out there to make the job safe. So back to the directive. One of the things in there is about multi-purpose equipment. I was talking just prior to this conference with someone in the audience regarding multi-purpose equipment. And we all know that there's equipment out there that can be configured very similarly to a crane. So we are looking at that and looking at the certification requirements for when something meets the requirements of B50.6, that they're trained, they're certified, and evaluated. And so it's something that we're looking at. And then it's also good to point out that on the operator training side, we had tons of stuff in there about the training side of it, but it is not required to be documented. However, I would say, having been an inspector myself for a long time and having dealt with claims and issues and incidents and whatnot, I would never undervalue the necessity to have some sort of written documentation of training. It may not be required, but it is certainly something that I would definitely encourage people to do as a best practice. After being in this business for a long time, I can tell you that even though the rule may not require it, it is certainly something that helps when we're evaluating, when we're looking at it from an outside position and evaluating what was actually done. To have something that documents that is worth its weight, for sure. Now, we have gotten, since the rule came out, lots of people questioning us about certifying bodies and who's able to do that and who's allowed to present certification. We do have a process set out for if somebody makes a complaint and says that they got a certification and it was indeed fraudulent or it didn't meet the requirements of a certified body. We will look into that. So far, we've received very few complaints in regards to that, but we do have a process in place to make sure that if somebody were to call us and ask us about their certification and whether or not it was something that we would recognize, we have a process in place to handle that. And also about the training of organizations, we've met with many of the recognized bodies to talk about what is required in the teaching of the certification test and whether or not there is a question regarding a testing organization in particular. We have processes in place to handle that as well. One thing that is kind of tricky, and this goes down to the federal bare minimums, the benchmark for states. We left the states the opportunity in the rulemaking to determine if their requirements meet the federal floor. So there are some states who have licensures that claim to meet the federal floor. Some have made themselves aware to us, others have not. So I just want to point out that on that particular issue, it was never OSHA's intent to have somebody have two different licenses in the same state. If you have for example, a CCO certification, or if you have a state license, we weren't trying to build up a system that required you to have two. However, I do understand that that may be the case with some states. And so, we're looking at the federal floor, and usually, I mean, so far, no one has come to OSHA saying that a state has not met the federal floor with their licensure. Not yet, that I know of. But if they do, we will look at that very closely and we'll determine whether or not they indeed do. But we left it up to the state in the rule to determine whether they met the federal floor. So it is kind of a touchy issue. We left that, as I said, up to the state. So if a complaint came up on that, that would be something we'd have to look at very carefully to make sure that they did meet the federal floor and what they used to evaluate their criteria versus, the testing organizations. Again, evaluations are important. Our compliance officers are directed by this directive to evaluate, to look at the evaluations of the operators and see if the types of equipment that they're operating are listed, at least by type. And so they are out there looking for these things now, and we have issued some citations to folks who had no evaluation at all, or had an evaluation that didn't even meet the bare minimums of by type, or by the way it was configured. So we have found some of those things, not a ton, but we have found it, and we are looking for evaluations. I just want y'all to know in the community that our compliance staff are evaluating that, or not to use the term lightly, there is a double there, but they are looking at the evaluations very closely. A couple investigations that I'd like to talk about real quick. We had a partial collapse of a cantilever gantry crane. This was in a logging operation in Virginia. This crane was used to grapple logs and to hoist them up and to create stacking out on a rail yard where they were ready to put them out, or on a barge. It was either rail or barge. And so when this particular crane was unloading the logs, the cantilever portion collapsed, resulting in a complete failure, and the operator was killed. Now, this wasn't a construction operation, but I hadn't seen a cantilever crane like this before. And it was interesting. And so the Directorate of Construction gets called in. Usually, if it involves a crane, we get called in because we have people that know cranes pretty well in the Directorate of Construction. And this one happened to be, we would probably say it was general industry or maybe even maritime, because they were loading barges as well. So, but we do quite a bit of different things. We kind of do all things crane. The second one was a rough terrain crane tip over in Pennsylvania. This didn't result in a fatality, but you can see what happened to that particular crane. You know, it's not in its natural state there, to say it lightly. And the investigation is ongoing on this, but we see these things quite often. As a matter of fact, there was one that occurred where a hydraulic crane, a lot bigger than that, was sitting on its back over near the Washington Monument, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, in an operation that happened in DC. My staff helped investigate that one as well. Unfortunately, this happens more than you would think. And at least on this one, it didn't result in a fatality or an injury, which is, you know, the outcome we're looking for. But I think we'd all agree we'd rather have that crane configured in a different way. Crane injury data. This is over the last 5 years of crane data from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. You can see we're trending in the right direction. You know, from going from 600 to 700 in 2018 down to 390 in 2020 is a good direction. What I would say is once we get 2021 data in there, we'll look at that as well. I do think in 2020, the pandemic did play a little bit of a role in some of the data that was being reported out. I'm not saying that it was higher or lower. I'm just saying that in 2020, you know, it was probably maybe a little bit of an outlier. On fatality data, this is good. I mean, one is too many, but you can see that going from 32 down to 13 in a matter of 5 years is going in the right direction. That, again, that's too many deaths of crane operations, of workers. You can also see that some of them also were general industry. Unfortunately, when we're looking up the NAICS for construction or for crane operations, it combines, BLS combines both construction and general industry. So we didn't have the time to go through each one of the records. And right now, getting that data sometimes is, well, even though we're sister organizations with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are still protocols we have to go through. So we just reported that out combined. Many of those cranes we know are operated in both industries, general industry and in construction, depending upon what you're doing. The top crane violations, this is something that I didn't put any numbers next to, but you can see they aren't in a particular order, but I would say that 1427 was cited quite a bit for certification and the evaluation side. So that is something that we are looking at, and I will tell you, because that directive is out there in May of this year, there will be more compliance staff out there looking at evaluations and training of crane operators. Again, keeping clear of the load, crane operations, inspections of the crane, signal person qualifications. We thought that was important to include that as well, because that is really dang important when you're lifting a load. I think you all would agree with me on that. Hoisting personnel, work area control, working around power lines. These are all the top conditions that we still see out there involving crane operations. Now I'm going to switch gears here real quick and talk about trenching. Back in 2017, we started an initiative called the Agency Priority Goal, where our number one goal was to reduce fatalities in trenching. In 2016, we had a spike of 35 fatalities the year before. And so we decided that we were going to put as much pressure on this as we could to try to reduce it, and we did. Over a period of 3 years, 2017, 18, and 19, we inspected probably at least 7,500 inspections on excavation work sites. We put a lot of pressure on investigating and looking at all trenches. And when you ask yourself, what do you mean by all trenches? Our directive actually says to our field staff that when they're driving down in their duties and they see an open excavation, they're required to stop. Because you don't know if somebody's down in that trench or not when you're driving on the road. It could be deep. And so they stop, they verify if an employer is doing what they need to be doing to protecting workers, we drive on. If they're not, well, then we inspect them. And we put a lot of pressure on the industry on that, not because it's a bad industry, but because the numbers of fatalities were escalating. And so we needed to put some pressure to bring it down. And we found that it did go down. But unfortunately, what I'm going to show you next is it did go down, but then it went back up. In 2022, that number was put out back in July. The number on that now at the end of the year is 28 fatalities this year. So again, we're recognizing that we need to be doing putting some more pressure on the excavation industry, because that's 28 too many deaths for such a small sector of the construction industry trades, and it's such a visible hazard. So as heavy equipment operators, as crane operators, when you see these types of things, I'm sure you would say something about it, slope, shore, shield. And if it's not slope, short, or shield, and it's over 5 feet, there's something going on there that's hazardous. And 28, too many people died this last year in trenches. And so we're looking at putting some pressure on that as well. I'm going to change gears here to mental health. And how am I doing on time? I'm good? Okay, because I'm more than 3/4 of the way through, so I just wanted to make sure. We've been looking at suicide in the workplace from a viewpoint, a holistic approach. And if you look at the construction industry trades, the construction industry trades have like 7 times the rate of, unfortunately, taking their own lives in the construction industry trades. And so it's something we think is the right thing to raise. It's something that we've got high cover on. The President of the United States said that the federal agencies will be doing something, will be doing some outreach to bring this to the attention of industries. And we're doing our part within the construction industry trades. The Secretary is committed to mental health in the workplace, and it is something I can tell you that is important. It's not something we're going to regulate. I just look at it as the Director of Construction is doing the right thing. And so we're going to raise this to stakeholder groups as something we should all be thinking about, because it is important. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics has data that shows that suicides and unintentional overdoses of things like opioids are unfortunately hurting construction workers at an inordinate rate. So we are looking at this very closely. It's not something that we're trying to regulate, but we're bringing it up to the industry's attention. I'm sure that your associations as well look at this as well. It is important that we address this. If you look at the numbers overall, just statistically, you can see that they've been rising. And it is the number of suicides, and there is a correlation between that and unintentional drug overdoses. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a health specialist, I'm not a mental health specialist either, but What we are trying to do as an agency is bring it to people's attention and putting up stuff on our webpage that will help workers and employers who are looking to get help to address this issue in the workplace. We call it non-traditional safety, but it's safety nonetheless. And it's the right thing to do. We thought it was so much the right thing to do that we worked with our cooperative programs and we built a poster on the 5 things you can do to prevent suicide in the workplace. We know that this is happening in the workplace, and it's not just construction, so this covers everyone. But at the same time, I think some of the most important things we can do as human beings is just being a human being to one another. And when things happen where people might be feeling down, you don't know what's going on in their minds and whether or not they're thinking of taking their own life. And it's just something that we think is the right thing to do. There are some resources out there. We're not all HR people. I'm not an HR person. I'm a safety guy. So I'm a safety professional, but I do know when it gets into the HR lane who I need to go to get help on that. And this is one that was put out by a work group that helps people in that lane on the legal side of what you can do to help workers on mental health promotion and preventing suicide in the workplace. Wrapping this up, we are doing quite a bit on heat illness, and we're putting out quite a bit of information on this. We did a couple workshops that were nationwide. We did one back in May that had, no, that wasn't in October. That was the proposed rulemaking. But we did one back in May that was, we had probably, 10,000 people online with us on. It was really cool. It was done totally virtual. And there were a lot of construction stakeholder groups on there. And heat in the workplace is something that's only going to grow in magnitude. And it's something that OSHA is looking at. We put out an advance notice for proposed rulemaking. And it's something that we're looking at doing more on in the future, perhaps rulemaking. We also put out a heat emphasis program. So OSHA compliance officers, when you have a heat magnitude day, this is for outdoors and indoors as well, but on days when it is above 85 and the humidity level hits a certain level, we are doing all of our construction inspections. We're looking at heat in the workplace to see what workers whether or not they're trained and whether or not they have the right things to protect them in hot weather. We have a lot of heat prevention resources. I'm not going to go through all these, but what I would say is you get the slide on this. There's a lot of good stuff we put out there, and there's going to be more stuff developed as we work on ways that we can prevent workers from getting heat stress. The last thing I want to talk to you about is this is important. These are things that I'm working on in the Directorate of Construction to promote safety and health. First of all is a national emphasis program for falls in all industries. We have one in construction. We do a lot of outreach in construction, but this covers all industries. So OSHA is putting together our forces to look at falls. As I mentioned earlier, over 40% of all fatalities are related to falls. We're going to put our efforts on to trying to move the needle on that to prevent more falls, prevent workers from needlessly dying from falls in the workplace. The other thing is, I mentioned Focus 4 in our field operations manual. That's the manual that all of our compliance officers are trained in. We're going to put Focus 4 in there. We're also going to be doing more health in construction. And I'm going to end this with a pet project that I really enjoy, the safety helmet. A lot of you have seen those new helmets that are ANSI approved, that have chin straps and technology built into the helmet. We do believe that we believe in it so much that we're doing pilots on all of our compliance staff right now. We're starting with 2 areas, one up in New England and one down in Texas, where all of our compliance officers in those particular offices will be piloting. When I say piloting, it's something new. They will all be wearing the new safety helmets. And it's not just the fact that it has a chin strap, it also has the technology built in it to, if you do fall, it will help prevent you, the chances of you getting a TBI. And so we're looking at it very closely. This is a best practice, but it's something that this is a way that OSHA can show by leading by example that we believe in this so much, we're going to buy it. And as a matter of fact, we're not only going to buy into it, but hopefully we can support it so other people within the construction industry trades will think about a hard hat versus a helmet that has technology built in it that will help prevent injuries that hurt construction workers. So with that, I'll end. I thank you for your time, and I think I just went right on, didn't I?
Yes, thank you very much. So let's get a round of applause for Dr. Ketchum. So in the interest of time, you're going to join us for the Q&A panel at the end.
I'll be here.
So I'm sure there's a bunch of questions that have come in, but we will wait until the end to ask those to you. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you.
So thank you again. So our next presenter is going to be come to us via Zoom. So as we get that set up, hopefully we'll give her the presenter option and then be able to join us. I'm going to give a brief introduction for her. It's Lenora Knapp who is going to join us. Lenora is a PhD. She is the president of Knapp and Associates International, Inc., a consultancy that has served the professional credentialing community for 3 decades. The world of consultancy, in the world of work and consultancy, focuses on helping new programs to flourish by incorporating a market-driven design thinking process to create credentials and guiding established programs to greater success through credential redesign and future proofing, and by uncovering new business opportunities created by market trends. Lenora co-authored The Business of Certification, a best-selling publication recognized by the American Society of Association Executives as one of the 6 books you and your association need. She also authored the Future Trends in Certification chapter in the last 2 editions of the credentialing industry's seminal reference, the ICE Certification Handbook. Lenora is a recipient of the Institute for Credentialing Excellence's prestigious Industry Leadership Award for innovation in the field of professional credentialing. Thanks for joining us today, Lenora. I believe we can see you now. Let's test if we can, and we can see your slides. Let's test if we can we hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me, TJ?
Yes, we can. So please go ahead. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. I feel like I've done my job just by managing the technology up to this point. So terrific. I am so pleased to be here to talk with you today because we're talking about my favorite subject, which is the future of professional credentialing. But I also think it's something that's important for all of us right now. And the reason for that is we've seen more disruption in the professional credentialing field in the last 7 years than we've seen in the 100-year plus history of professional credentialing. Before I get into the 5 trends I'm going to be talking about today, I wanted to share a little bit of information with you about how it is that we curate these trends and identify them. We cast a very wide net. It goes beyond just looking at trends that are specific to credentialing. And the reason for that is that many of these trends can impact how work is done, needs and preferences in the market, and how the market perceives professional credentialing. And the thing to think about as I go through the 5 trends today is recognizing that a trend can either present an opportunity or pose a threat. And how that trend will end up impacting us depends on how we act or don't act in relationship to the trend. Now, behind every trend, there are much larger, more comprehensive drivers of change. These are the 3 drivers of change related to the trends I'll be talking about today. So there are much larger circumstances going on in the larger environment, more comprehensive, and also in terms of how the market might perceive credentialing and also what their needs and preferences are. Here are the 5 trends that we're going to be talking about today. Going to be starting with Gen Z. So we'll be looking at this generation that is the most recent to begin the transition from school to work and what that means for us. So born between 1997 and 2012, the 62 million members of Gen Z comprise about 40% of the US population. The oldest are about 25 or 26 right now, and they've been in the workplace for about 4 to 8 years. depending on when they entered the workforce. By 2030, Gen Z is going to comprise nearly a third of the workforce. Now, here's the stereotypical image of Gen Z, but when you start to do research on this generation, you find that they're much more multidimensional than this. And in fact, the research shows that Gen Zs are passionate pragmatists, they're ambitious, very focused on the future, and they're continuously learning. When they're not learning in formal settings like school, they are engaged in a lot of self-directed learning using those very technology tools that we just saw in the previous photo. And overall, as a generation, they are highly driven to learn and to succeed in both their personal and professional lives. So we have really a very potentially credential savvy generation, given their future focus on success. We did a study in 2020 with 1,000 Gen Zs to find out more about what they thought about professional credentialing and also some other topics related to workforce readiness. And what we found was that a very large percentage believe that work-related credentials are very to extremely important. And interestingly, despite the fact that the Gen Zs that we talked to were relatively young, 18 to 20 years old, some were in the workforce, some were still in school, 1 in 5 had already earned a work-related credential. And a sizable percentage were working on a credential at the time or were planning to do so in the next few years. So we have a very credential savvy generation here. And here's an example for you from the world of operators. This is Kate Fahey. At the age of 18, she became the first licensed female crane operator in Ireland. And perhaps what's even more impressive than her age is that she did this in 6 months. 6 months before she earned her license, she'd never been in a crane, never even had a thought about becoming a crane operator. But that shows you a bit about the drive and motivation of Gen Z. Next trend, we'll take a look at all of the advanced technology that is beginning to have an influence on how we do work and what our job roles look like. Initially, when we first started hearing about this, the idea was that robots were going to be taking our jobs away. But the truth is, the future is really going to be more about how technology is going to change how we work, and in some cases, make our jobs better. But we are going to need to develop new competencies as those roles do change as a result of technology. We're going to be working in human-machine teams. And this is an example that you can see here. We have an operator that is remotely operating cranes. And he also has at his disposal 5 different screens of information that can help inform what he does. And this, I thought, was remarkably similar to another example that I use when I talk about this from medicine. This is robotic-assisted surgery. We've got the surgeon on the left who is viewing a screen and also remotely operating the surgical instruments that you see on the right. And the added element to this is that in advance of the surgery, a machine has gone through pre-surgical medical records, and that information is being used to help guide the surgical instruments. And the finding from this is that patients that have procedures in this manner have a 21% shorter hospital stay. So as we work in these human-machine teams, we have the opportunity to be more effective and also create better outcomes. So our role is to anticipate how job roles are going to change as a result of continuing advances in technology, and help people acquire those new skills so that they can stay ahead of the game rather than falling behind. There's going to be a lot of new jobs out there as well. You can research some of these on the internet. The thing to keep in mind is that if these are not all roles for data analysts and IT professionals, that there are and there will continue to be practitioners and subject matter experts in these roles. We need to hear, they need insights from the people that are actually doing the jobs. So in the future, we have the potential to be training crane operators in these roles as well. Skills-based hiring is the next trend. The traditional indicators that we have been relying on to show people's competencies, use things like resumes, your past work experience, degrees, and even professional certification, are actually somewhat imperfect ways to demonstrate the complete breadth and depth of somebody's knowledge and skills. These traditional indicators weren't designed to give a kind of a personalized readout of what my profile of skills are and which specific skills I have demonstrated mastery for. And this has started to become an issue for employers. They figured out that that piece of paper isn't really helping them to get the right person for the right job. And now they're very focused on the idea that they need to have the information about the specific skills that individuals have. So that is more finely tuned than our professional credentials. We're going to need to figure out how to be able to do that, how to provide that type of skill level information, which is good not just for the employers, but also for the individuals that are looking for jobs as well, to be able to demonstrate those skills. And here we have a humorous cartoon about what a skills-based hiring process might look like at IKEA. Incremental credentialing is something that has been heavily researched and funded for about the last 5 years or so. And there are a number of initiatives for this, both nationally and internationally. And they're focused on looking at ways that we can recognize the knowledge and skills that people are acquiring while they're on their way to what we might call the big credentials, like an academic degree or professional certification. The thinking behind this is that although we're acquiring all these knowledge and skills along the way, there's no way for people to show others or to use those. It's kind of like metaphorically this jumble of Lego blocks that don't have much meaning in their current form. So the idea is to formally recognize what is being learned along the way, but also to build some kind of structures or systems where maybe people can combine and stack these credentials in a way that enables them to move forward in their education and their career, and also come out of it with something substantive. So for us, the question is, what role can professional credentialing bodies play in helping to support incremental credentialing as individuals are acquiring knowledge and skills? Now, it happens that micro-credentials is one of the possible ways that we can do that. This is the most widely discussed approach to credentialing and validating skills and competencies in smaller chunks than our traditional credentials like certification and licensure. There are a lot of definitions out there about micro-credentials. I'm providing you with these just so you have that frame of reference of where I'm coming from, where when I talk about them, the two key takeaways here would be, number one, that there has to be some kind of verification or validation through assessment or other means that you have acquired the skills or knowledge that the micro-credential represents. And then secondly, that the scope of the micro-credential can be as narrow or as granular as a single skill or competency, which makes these quite different from our traditional credentials. So how do we use them? Well, they provide a great opportunity to create on-ramps into a field or into a particular job role. So folks like Gen Zs that are just entering the workforce, or people that have been working but in other areas with different backgrounds, and now they're transitioning into a new role. Looking at it through the lens of professional certification, how we can create pathways to certification with the use of micro-credentials. So in this scenario, we break down that massive certification that we have, that comprehensive assessment process. We break that down into modules. Usually these modules will be based on content or skill areas. And for each module, each content area, there's an assessment. Once you complete the assessment successfully, you earn the micro-credential. After you've accumulated all the micro-credentials, you earn the certification. One of the values of this is that those individual micro-credentials are helping to recognize what I have learned and validating it along the way to the certification. Another way micro-credentials are being used within the context of professional certification is to help support and encourage continuing professional development. And in this case, credentials are created and awarded to recognize the knowledge and skills that we acquire after certification. As you know, we continue to grow and learn as professionals. And without something like this, we typically don't have a way to have that recognized and to be able to demonstrate that to others. There's another opportunity that you see here, which is to use micro-credentials as stepping stones to significant career milestones or some of the types of transitions people make. So for instance, let's say you have somebody in construction that has been doing very hands-on work that now has moved forward and ultimately is supervising a group of others or moving into a management role. They're still in the field, but they need a pathway to do that, a way to have those knowledge and skills recognized. And then the last use case for micro-credentials I wanted to mention is the idea of creating a cluster of micro-credentials that will help support people in acquiring and demonstrating and having verified what might be advanced specialty or niche skills. So I think hopefully you've seen that through all these different examples that there's a lot we can do with micro-credentials. They give us a degree of flexibility that we haven't had with traditional credentials. So they can be complementary to traditional credentials. So here, what we want to be thinking about is how might micro-credentials fit into our roles as professional credentialing bodies? How do we position those vis-a-vis the larger credentials? And what role we might play in helping others to develop micro-credentials in the areas of the occupations that we certify as well. So I think I left a couple of minutes for questions, TJ, if we have any.
We do have I think time for one question. Bob, do we have any questions in the back?
Yeah, we do. How would you suggest that we could use the trends you outlined when looking at the future of certification of load handling equipment operators?
Well, I think there's really what it all comes down to is thinking about for each of these trends in different ways, how would these trends affect how we do the job, and what specific knowledge and competencies that we need to have to do the job, and how they will impact the job market, the employment market. And doing some of those analyses to take a look at that. The different trends may have different impacts. But I think what often is required is to both have, obviously, the subject matter experts and the practitioners in the room, along with some facilitated guidance and thinking about the types of different ways that these trends could impact what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Knapp.
Thank you. So I appreciate the time for Dr. Knapp. Even though you can't hear it, we can get a round of applause for her here. And
Oh, I can hear it. Thank you very much.
thank you for joining us. As we transition to our next speaker, I'm going to give an introduction, and hopefully we'll get back to our main screen and some of the live. So as I introduce, hopefully we'll get that set up and be able to see the next slides. So our next presenter is, there we go. Our next presenter is Catherine Kate Crawford. Kate Crawford joined the National Safety Council in 2022 as the research manager for the Work to Zero initiative. Kate has an MS in industrial hygiene and a PhD in occupational and environmental health from the University of Iowa. She worked as a postdoctoral research scholar for the Emerging Issues Program at the Great Plains Center for Agricultural Health, a NIOSH Agricultural Safety and Health Center. Kate has research experience in personal exposure assessments and evaluating control strategies. Thank you very much for being here with us today, Kate.
There we go. Just making sure we get lined up here. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm glad to be here today. As TJ said, I'm with the National Safety Council, and we have been talking with CCO about ways that we might be able to work together to help the crane industry. So I'm excited to be here today to learn a little bit more about that. And to start with, I'll tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do. So Work to Zero, we are a grant-funded initiative within the National Safety Council. We are primarily funded by the McElhatton Foundation, and our goal is to eliminate fatalities with technology. So I'll echo a little bit of what Scott said. That goal is based on our fundamental belief that every worker deserves to go to work and then come home safely. So we are working towards zero fatalities. Specifically within that goal, where we kind of see ourselves fitting in, we are aiming to help employers adopt technology solutions to eliminate fatality risks in the workplace. And it's nice following Lenora's talk where she introduced you to some of that tech. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You can see from these pictures, we've come a long way on this journey, right? And so here, specifically, we're looking at some pictures that are illustrating working at heights, which we know is one of the most hazardous situations in the workplace. We've already heard a little bit about it today. So we're coming at this from an approach, is there technology that we can use to reduce this risk, or better yet, eliminate it? And so in this picture here, you see a worker with a drone. And so in our mind, if that worker's feet stay on the ground, we've eliminated that fall from height risk. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Excuse me. I will say some of these technology solutions that we see them more maybe in our personal lives, right? In our vehicles. I know I was on the plane, my phone alerted me that I was listening to my music too loud because I had to turn it up, to hear it over the plane engines. So we have those kinds of machines, and then I get out of the airport, I get in my Uber, and the backup screen that the driver's using, you see this amazing tech kind of in these other places that we don't necessarily see in the workplaces. So what we're trying to do is help make that kind of technology, help make that innovation more accessible to employers. I think it's probably safe to say that for people in this room, right, safety is our priority. I will say there's other benefits to implementing this safety technology. So we know that implementing this kind of technology can lead to decreased workplace injuries and fatalities. Then we're also looking at decreases in medical costs, claims, fines. But then with all that, we see an increase in operational efficiencies as well. And I know up front with a lot of these tech solutions, that initial cost can seem like a barrier. But when we look at it, we can actually see that business as usual can cost more over time. So I've talked a little bit about the benefits, some of the background with tech. I hope that gives you an idea about where we're coming from and why we're focusing on this. I do want to switch gears a little bit here and start talking about some of the research that NSC has done to understand this problem. These 3 questions that you see are really what kind of shaped our objectives for our projects. So this first one, we were looking at BLS data to identify workplace situations and other factors that had the greatest potential for contributing to these serious injuries and fatalities. Then we wanted to look at different technologies, find some different solutions. We talked to safety professionals who are using this tech to find out what challenges they encountered, what's working, what's not working, and then really kind of dig into those. All of this information that I'm kind of outlining is in our 2020 Safety Technology Report. If you're interested in more details, that is available on our website and free for download. But let's dig into this first objective a little more. So this project was done 2019, 2020. So we were digging into 2017 BLS data to identify the most hazardous situations, again, with the greatest potential for fatalities. These are non-roadway fatalities. There's another group at NSC that works specifically with roadway. So this is all non-roadway. But when we looked at these are the situations that we found that were contributing most significantly to these fatalities. So 23% of non-roadway occupational fatalities were from working at height. Workplace violence, 13%. Repair and maintenance, construction and installation. I think these probably won't surprise folks, but you can see these different situations. Vehicle pedestrian interactions, confined space entry, things like that. We also looked at some of these systemic risks. So what are things that are contributing to this fatality risk and amplifying these situational risks? And the main ones we found were worker fatigue, right? So mental, physical, leadership that's not prioritizing safety, that can come into play, lack of training. We've talked about that a little bit. Another one we saw was risk normalization. So folks who are saying, you know, that's just part of the job. We've been doing it this way for years. It's just something that we do. All of those situations can kind of contribute to these risks. So if we start digging into some specifics, so here's heavy equipment operation. Again, we're looking at some of these situational, systemic. Situational, we have crushing, overturn, electrical shock, and then struck by vehicles, equipment, debris. If we're looking specific to cranes, right, we know we're worried about contact with overhead power lines, collapses, being struck by boom and jibs. About 50% of crane fatalities across industries are caused by workers being struck by an object or equipment. So we know these are big ones. The systemic ones that we see kind of across areas still apply here. Those are some of the ones that we pulled out. So that second objective, that second question I talked about is identifying those technologies. So we really dug in, we tried to find, we have found over 100 technologies that we believe to be particularly relevant to being able to eliminate or mitigate some of these risks. And these are some of the main ones that we found. We also, again, we were talking to people using this technology, kind of digging into that cost versus effectiveness, how it was working for them. So I'll point out some of the ones you'll see on the screen: digital gas monitors, drones, lone worker monitoring. I've been working in ag safety the last couple of years. Those 3 were all on our radar when we're looking at grain bins, manure pits, things like that. Those are really important. I'll kind of focus in a little bit here on proximity sensors and some of the kind of related tech with those. It might be a little bit more relevant to what we're talking about today. But a proximity sensor is going to be a device that detects an object within a set radius without physical contact. So it's detecting objects, people, machinery that come within a set proximity, and then it will send an alert to workers, operators, some centralized platform. A little bit similar to that, the location geofencing, the work zone intrusion detection, to some degree the wearables. Those work similarly, and it's going to alert a worker or somebody else if somebody's entering a potentially dangerous area. We heard just a little bit earlier, 2 of those focus 4s, right, are the struck by and the caught betweens. And we've actually seen that proximity sensors can be highly effective at reducing some of those risks associated with both of those hazards. We've seen this in construction and installation, excavation, heavy equipment operation. Anytime you have those vehicle pedestrian interactions, those can be effective. With cranes, you know, we set up these barriers, right? So we know that there's certain zones that people shouldn't enter. It doesn't always stop someone. They can still walk through that fence. Unfortunately, we've seen cases with fatal injuries where exactly that happened. Another worker went in through a barrier, got too close, wasn't seen by the operator, and ended up being crushed. So these, potentially you can think of them as just an additional line of defense. We still need barriers, we still need spotters, but maybe there's something else here that we can put in to add another alert and another layer of defense. Our third question, so we know that there's hazards, we've seen that there's technology, but we know there's another step. You know, so we wanted to dig into what these challenges for innovation were. Again, we're talking to health and safety directors across industries to find out, you know, what some of the biggest issues are. So 30% said their number one challenge was just their ability to identify the right technology. 25% talked about their specific organization's mindset and readiness towards technology. 22% brought up the ability to adopt new technology. So how is something like this going to work into your existing safety program? Are we prepared to pull something like this into what we're doing now? 17% talked about the ability to build the business case. So we've had EH&S leaders come up and say, this is something I'm interested in, but I have to go to leadership and I have to give them numbers and I don't know where to start. I don't have the resources available to start looking at this. And then 12% too brought up these kinds of hidden risks, unforeseen tech issues. How are you going to troubleshoot something when it's a brand new technology that maybe you haven't seen in your workplace? So that's really kind of where we see Work to Zero come in. This is something we're interested in, is how can we help employers address some of those barriers? How can we make this innovation more accessible? When we started this out, a lot of employers said, we just don't have the support to do this. We need some kind of defined process for how to approach this. So with the research we did, with the recognition of those barriers, and then with that kind of feedback about what resources were needed, we created our safety innovation journey, which I will take you through here briefly. These are 5 steps to consider when you're looking at this kind of journey. And then we have resources and tools and things that are available for each step to help you along the way. So this first one, assess your risk. This is a web-based tool. This is something that can help you figure out how to prioritize potential tech solutions based on your workplace's specific risks, hours that people are exposed. Helps you kind of get drilled down some of that. The second one, identifying tech solutions. We have a tech locator tool, so you can go and you can see what kind of possible solutions are out there to address those risks that you've just identified. And then part of this too, we have webinars and case studies and white papers and things to give some more background information into these different technologies to give you as much information as possible. 3 is determine your readiness. This is a really important step. We always kind of say, you know, you can't go out and buy a drone and then be up and running with an effective drone safety program. There's steps you have to take to get that working. This particular step we found was helpful. Right now it's in the form of just a 15-question survey that's asking questions about your workplace, about your organization, to kind of see where you are in terms of being ready for this, and then offering some insight into what questions maybe you should be asking or things you should look at to get to the next stage. 4 is making the business case. So I kind of touched on this earlier, but we have calculators set up to help you kind of estimate that return on investment and when and where you might see it. As I said, some of these tech solutions, you're looking at these initial costs. wondering how that comes into play based on what it's going to help you for within the future. And then this last piece is the roadmap. And we say, a lack of effective change management, will just lead to failure in any kind of these situations. So we really tried to put something together. Once you've done all this background work, you're ready to go with this. What steps do you need to take at these different stages to plan and prepare and implement and evaluate the solution so you can be successful with it? I've been mentioning these resources. Sorry, I keep looking at this one and I can hear my mic goes out every time I look at that screen, so I apologize. I'm supposed to look down here. I've been mentioning these resources. Like I said, I just want to remind you, they're on our website. They're free, they're available. A couple of different things we have. I've been speaking fairly broadly about some of these general hazards because that's where we started, but we are drilling down and doing some industry spotlights. That's one of the reasons we started talking with CCO about what we can do to get some more specific information. Webinars, reports, and then the case studies. That's one thing that we hear about a lot is people say, I'm interested in this, but I really want to hear about a case where this was implemented successfully, and I want to see what that looks like and how it worked, and I want some information. So we've been trying to compile those as well, talking to employers who have been successful, how they're using it, what worked, what didn't, and how they kind of adjusted. So those are all there. And again, we're here, we're trying to find ways to work together with this industry. So, I feel like I'm not doing my job if I'm not asking what you need help with. So if there are issues that you're dealing with that you would like some resources on, let us know, and we'll see if we can kind of explore that. What type of resources would be the most helpful? If you're thinking about technology solutions, what kind of questions do you have? And then if you're using technology in your organization, we love hearing about that. Like I said, with some of our case studies, with other things we do, I think it's really helpful to get some of that information so we can share it with other folks who are looking to do that. So my contact information is up here. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be here for the panel. TJ has also said if you have questions about this or you're interested to get in touch with him. So I encourage you to do that and give us a call. Thanks.
Thanks again, Kate. And as she said, she's going to be here for the Q&A panel. So there'll be opportunity to ask her questions at that point as well at the end of the day. So our next speaker is our very own John Zarian with CCO. John is, let me get up. John Zarian serves as CCO's General Counsel and Senior Director of Quality Management. Prior to joining CCO in 2016, and for 27 years, his private legal practice emphasized intellectual property and complex business litigation matters. John is an experienced trial lawyer, adjunct law professor, mediator, and arbitrator. He has been recognized as one of the top 100 lawyers in the Mountain State region. John earned his law degree from the University of Southern California and holds a master's degree in finance from the University of Utah. Today he's going to talk to us about test security breaches. John, the mic's yours.
Well, thanks, TJ. Just to be clear, I think he said adjunct law professor, not adjunct law professor. Just want to make sure that was clear. Well, I wasn't sure he'd cover all of that, but he did. He covered it all. So, lawyers like their bios, and the other thing we like is that ego shrine on the wall with the certificates. When I first went to my first job as an attorney, everybody had one, so I had to get one. It's just a thing I kind of let you in on. But anyway, my presentation today is about exam security. The title, as you saw, is the subtitle, I should say, is "What Doesn't Kill Us Makes Us Stronger." And that's a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. That's a picture of Friedrich Nietzsche, kind of a complicated philosopher, but there he is. And his thing was, anything that we improve through adversity, difficulties, we overcome them, and it's an opportunity to become stronger. That's true of exam security. Certainly, there are so many threats in this space, but there are also opportunities for improvement. I was impressed that you will be too, seeing this picture with that mustache, right? It's just hard to look away. And I tried, I don't think I could sport one that would look nearly as good, but I gave it a shot there in the in that picture. So we'll see. Anyway, that's Frederick. Let me start with just, this isn't unique to us. The problem of cheating, and especially in high stakes testing, is just endemic. It's everywhere. You will all have read in the last few years about Operation Varsity Blues, swept up such notable celebrities as Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman. Were among those charged. 50 people were involved, at least 50 people, in a $25 million college entrance exam cheating scheme. There was a mastermind behind it, a guy named Rick Singer, but they were ultimately charged with racketeering, conspiracy, et cetera, money laundering. There was a lot of people swept up, and they were basically helping students cheat on the ACT, the SAT, college entrance exams. And there was a lot of money in it. Trainers, proctors, even a Harvard graduate. That's the Harvard graduate in the picture. The glasses were a giveaway, I think, but there he is. And a turtleneck, I think, maybe a turtleneck would also be a giveaway. We're involved in the scheme. So there was a proctor who was basically hiring people like this gentleman, Mark Riddell was his name, and paying him up to $10,000 per student. He'd go in as a Harvard grad and take the exam for the college, for the purported candidate, the student who was sitting for the SAT or the ACT, and of course do very well. He'd taken quite a few of them. He brought in nearly $200,000 himself, but was ultimately sentenced to 4 months in prison. So maybe not so smart, the Harvard grad, but he got away with it for a while. And there's plenty of money, a lot of incentive in doing that. Another notable scam, if some of you certainly in the Georgia area would have heard of this, about 10 years ago in the Atlanta area, a grand jury indicted 35 teachers, principals, and administrators. And there was, you can see there with the medal, this was Dr. Beverly Hall, who was certainly very capable, but there was a lot of, with No Child Left Behind, there was a lot of pressure to do well, and basically they were fudging the numbers. They were cheating and helping students do better than they otherwise would have. There were strong incentives to do that, and ultimately, as noted, they were indicted. Even lawyers, I know shocking, have been known to cheat, and this happened recently, just earlier this year. The Law Society of Ontario caught a bunch of students who were cheating, had somehow figured out a way through the online testing that they rolled out to collaborate and exchanged information. And so they were collaborating to, I don't know what their system was exactly they had in place. They had to suspend all of their online testing immediately. And for a while did only the in-person, which they felt was more secure at the time. But they, through forensic analysis, found evidence that these people had in fact been colluding. And this, I'll get into this because of some of our experiences recently, kind of similar to this. So those candidates would be given a further opportunity to respond. But again, just another example of what's happening. We're not immune. So in our industry, crane, load handling industry, we're not immune from these. In fact, because of the stakes involved, because of how important the credential becomes, our certification becomes to an operator, and perhaps even to employers as well, right? That's important to it for them to have credentialed and authorized operators. It's high stakes. It's certainly a big incentive for people to cheat on one end and to help others cheat basically on the end of the exam administration. What I want to do is give you a little bit of background, sort of how, I want to give you some examples of how we've overcome some things and threats that have been presented to CCO along the way. Some of you will be familiar with a few of these, or many of them, have actually resulted in some improvements, pretty significant ones. I'm going to give you some examples of a couple of, probably from the not so good at all to one that's actually quite good. These are fraudulent cards that have been presented. We had for many years just a steady stream of these, maybe one or two a month, and then until it's slowed down for a reason I'll explain in a second. But here's an example that not very good, maybe at first glance, but if you look at it, you can see the hyperlink below. Designations are too large. It's the wrong color. Extra letter is hyperlinked. Certification number doesn't actually exist. There's a whole lot of things wrong with that. Here too, font is incorrect. We get these. People bring them to our attention, and we can spot them now pretty quickly. No CCO, NCCCO certified at the top of the card. Designations are in the wrong order. That's a thing. And so again, one that we could spot. Sometimes we'll see the signatures wrong. There's a lot of things that people can't do these fortunately very well, but people try. They really try. Here's one, font type and size. You have to look closely on the 2018, the 2023 are just slightly off on the last 2 digits. So this was a card that was doctored. Here's one that was actually quite good. Really, the biggest thing wrong with this is that the LBC and the LBT are in a different font than the rest of the card, and the designations are in the wrong order. So we'd seen a lot of these, like I say, it was just a steady stream, people trying to forge a credential. It's not quite cheating on the exam, we'll get to that. But how do we respond? Well, the VCO Online was developed. This allowed every employer to basically go online and check and see that, in fact, whatever number was on that card could not be pulled up. When that happens, they call us, and that's when a matter is open in our program integrity team. So the card, there you see it, a new version of it, but the VCO became very important. We still see a stream of those card cases, not like we did before. The other development is we've now got a QR code, which is just a further way that the employer can very easily take a look, scan the QR code, go right to where that credential should be online in the system. If it isn't, it's immediate indication that it's not a valid, as a fraudulent card. So that's a response. It actually has made us better. Those are developments over the last few years that have dramatically reduced, and yet people are very creative. This is someone, well, they could have done a much better job, couldn't they? If you look closely at the email, it's riddled with, we don't have typos like this in our internal communications, but this purports to be an email from someone at CCO to an individual who was trying to show this to an employer and said, look, someone at CCO said they messed up, and here's a screenshot of my actual, from VCO, of my actual credential. And of course it wasn't, it was doctored, but here's an individual trying to use that. So we received contact from an employer trying to verify this, and of course immediately advised them that it was not a valid credential. So people will get very creative. They'll try many different things. Let me go through some other sort of broader challenges. Now we're going to get into the testing phase. There was some protracted litigation back. This was when I was still outside counsel. Tom Sickle still calls it outhouse counsel. I prefer outside counsel. So outside counsel to CCO before I came in-house. And so there were a lot of allegations. There were certainly a lot of facts involving a written exam that had been appropriated. There were sanctions, circumvention allegations of that. The claims that there was discrimination and loss of to the business and so forth. Issues involving breaches of agreements. It went on for a long time. CCO ultimately prevailed at one trial, prevailed in another federal action. The matter was ultimately resolved. But that whole experience really led to a greatly enhanced approach to program integrity. This is a little hard to see, but there's just to suggest to you that there's an ethics and discipline committee. There are other committees or ways by which we obtain complaints. There's a program integrity effort that involves program sanctions against different categories of individuals. We now have no one person can make a decision on any sanctions. There's a committee of people, even if it's an internal decision. It's a staff committee of 6 people, a working team. So there are a lot of improvements made along the way in response to all that sort of adversity that was faced. The legal department, this is really a sign of progress, right? Legal department was created. So I was the first person there, and we now have another lawyer and 3 paralegals. Not all of them engaged just exclusively in looking at program integrity, but to a great degree, that's the largest single effort that we engage in addition to protecting intellectual property. So that became important, and we really increased involvement. We created and we've got a lot of tips over the last few years. We have this toll-free line, we have an email, and some of our really the biggest things we've uncovered have come through these tip lines. It's been really great to get others involved, and that's been really something that we learned along the way that was super important. A response to a challenge. Here we have a challenge. In 2017, unethical practical exam proctor. It seemed to be at the time relatively isolated, but yet there were over 100 candidates who had their practical exam score sheets invalidated. They were required to retake their exams. One single practical examiner, practical exam proctor, caused that much damage. Our response, we were able to sue and obtain an injunction. We changed our written agreements. We changed our policies in a couple of different areas. That was responses directly to that incident. And yet in 2020, matters seemed to have escalated again. We had a practical exam proctor and his training company who were actually had appropriated exams. They had the better part of 13 written exams. in their possession, having bribed, it would seem, the evidence strongly suggested, one or more written exam proctors. All of those had to be replaced. All those items that were compromised had to be replaced. Took an extraordinary amount of work, and some changes were made as a consequence. But this was something they were selling, something they were using. It was a misappropriation of the content. So we resorted to legal remedies. There's a procedure to take down a website. We did that, sued for copyright infringement, ultimately obtained a judgment in excess of $1 million, including attorney's fees, and obtained a broad permanent injunction. We made other changes as well to the program. Of course, had to replace the items, but we've made changes to item writing procedures so it's more secure. Copyright protection is now by item. We've switched, instead of copywriting the entire exam, so it greatly multiplies, frankly, the types of damages that can be obtained and the kind of protection. We look at other types of protection too, like scrambling, sort of technical protection, enhanced other protections, and then began to look at alternative testing modalities. That became essential at this point, to look at what other options do we have. We've seen problems with practical, we've seen problems with the written, certainly the paper pencil, people making copies of these booklets, and then this happened. 2022, this was a very early part of this year, we received a tip on one of those hotlines, I think it was by email, that a particular individual working in the Texas area was selling certifications. And here's what that investigation showed. On the paper pencil written exams, a passing pattern of answers had been developed for a number of exams. This was not unlike, if you think back to the Felicity Huffman situation, some of the things they were doing with score sheets. They developed this, and sometimes the proctors themselves had been bribed, and they would fill in the score sheet for the candidate. And they did this they charged thousands and thousands of dollars. In the case of the practical exams, sometimes score sheets would be filled in with results thought to be passing, and were, regardless of performance. So it was on a scale we had just not seen before. We analyzed, and we brought in some forensics to take a look at these. It was very time consuming, but the staff looked at 96 separate written exam administrations, over 2,000 written exams, and found strong evidence of collusion. So when you have the exact same answer pattern from people that took the same class in similar or the same test administration, some cases, 80% of the people in a particular test administration had the exact same answer pattern. And so very strong, same correct, same incorrect, same score, same result. And we had hundreds with the exact same pattern. Here's what we came up with. 272 candidates were required to validate 705 written exams, and then 161 candidates were required to validate 273 practical exams. Over 400 candidates and certificates were impacted by this scheme. And ultimately we'll be referring the program integrity team will be referring perhaps close to half of those to the Ethics and Discipline Committee for further consideration as to whether something further should be done. Many people were impacted as far as their credentials, of course, revoked, some for life, from participation in the program. How to respond? This is big, right? This is a really big thing that's happened in terms of its impact. There's a reason I put a crater there. It's big. So new modalities now become, there's other reasons, really good reasons to adopt these new modalities in terms of the convenience, et cetera. But frankly, test security is one of them. There is a camera on every single person taking one of these exams, right, through OPT or EOT, and that we have a record that we can audit and see what's happened during that exam administration. So those are technologies that we're looking at. Test personnel. We've got a lot of test personnel that help as proctors, as test site coordinators. We want to do more to keep them engaged, to know who they are, to provide them with training. In the case of, for example, practical exam proctors, we want to provide resources to make them successful. But we've been looking at and have had to adopt conflict of interest policies as well. All things that we need to do to bring up the reliability and the professionalism of these test personnel that help us deliver these exams, and finally increased forensic auditing. So that's really important. Looking at the videos, monitoring that we'll be able to have as evidence, maybe using more photographs with the tablet testing will be an option, and a lot more forensics. A lot more forensic. We'll be contracting with a company to help us analyze and get ahead of these situations as they occur. I'm at the close. This is my last slide, but the question, of course. So there you have it. My point is, we need to get better. We have to get better. Every time something like this happens, we have an opportunity to get better. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. With this last incident, we developed a list of 30 things we could look at to improve, and I've given you kind of a flavor of them. But that's good. That's a good thing. And that's really what maybe Nietzsche was saying. It can make us stronger. Difficulties can make us stronger. We do that so that the value of the credential is absolutely the best it can be. To keep that value, to keep the credential valid and worthwhile, and conveying the sort of standard, the brand of excellence that it should and does, we have to engage in this sort of response. But also, frankly, our accreditation requires it. And ANAB, it requires continuous improvement. They require responses to incidents like these. And that's another reason we do what we do and continue to improve as an organization. So with that, I think I'm just slightly over time, but thanks for your attention and your patience. And if there's any questions, I can take these now or later as you prefer, TJ.
Thanks, John. And why don't we take him at the Q&A session at the end, since you'll be here. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So thanks again, John. I noted you got a round of applause, even though you are a lawyer, but that's good. No, that was great. Thank you very much. The next person that's going to come and present is Fred Simmons. Fred's going to talk to us a bit about the CTAG. Fred Simmons is the Inspection and Training Manager with Foley Material Handling Company, Inc., who is one of the largest overhead and gantry crane manufacturers in the United States, whose products are trademarked as Virginia Crane. He has over 40 years of experience as a crane inspector, instructor, and service manager. Fred is an active member of the Crane Certification Association of America, Crane Manufacturers Association of America, and is an NCCCO commissioner. He also serves as the chairman of the Overhead Crane Management Committee and the Administrative Appeals Committee. Fred is also a member of the Crane Inspector Management Committee. And Fred is going to, he's the chair of the CTAG, and he's going to speak to you more about that today. Come on up, Fred.
Good afternoon, everyone. As TJ just said, I am the chairman of the CTAG committee. CTAG in the past year and a half is slowing a little bit. And as you can see, well, you'll see in a second, that it's about the Crane Type Advisory Group, and that's what we are as a committee. There's about 14 of us on there. And if you would like information on the CTAG committee, then you can go to the website, which you can read on your screen right there. I'm not going to present it to you. Most of you all, I think, can read. Before I get started, I would like to thank everyone for being here today. You know, I know it takes a lot of time and effort and money to come here, and I do want to thank those millions at home that are watching on Zoom. Just wanted to thank you for being here today also. All right. What I'd like to do next is, a lot of people will recognize this slide. This is Mr. Dave Ritchie, as you all can see. Dave was a real big part of all CCO. He played many, he was the head of many committees. He participated in a lot of things, and he was the first person to give what I'm talking about today, CTAG, Crane Type Advisory Group, I'm gonna keep saying it, so that, going through all these different types of cranes and figuring out what most similar to with no certification, if there's none available. Anyway, I would like to thank Dave for all of his commitment, and also I want to wish Dave a very happy and healthy retirement. And I'd like a round of applause right now for Dave. All right, the objectives of CTAG: to provide authoritative advice and directory to employers and crane operators as to appropriate certification for operators of different types of cranes. Now that's, like I said, that's the mission. Now we're looking, as you can read, all right, everyone can read this, the vision of CTAG. Basically what I'd like to say with CTAG is like this, let's just say an operator, an employer, a manufacturer, they wake up one morning, all right? They go they drive to work, they get to work, either they walk into the manufacturing facility or they walk out in the yard, and they look around and they think, oh, wait a minute, where'd that piece of equipment come from? I've got all these people that are certified in all these different types of cranes and lifting equipment. But wait a minute, you look over there and you see this weird one that you're not sure about. So that's where CTAG comes in. What people could do then, talking about manufacturers, operators, all this, what they can do then is they can go on to the CCO website or any of the other forums that CC has, and they can go and determine, what type of crane or what type of certification they would need for that particular crane. That's what CTAG's all about. And you'll see here in a minute, I got a little layout that if I can read it from up here, that I'll go through in more detail. Just a brief history. We were started in May of 2017 by the CCO, and then in 2019, we moved over to the CCO Foundation. It says 14 crane industry experts. We hope, anyway, they're experts. Like we like to refer to as everyone is SMEs, subject matter experts. That's what we are. The next one, I left this one in the slide. It says 500 plus collective hours of crane experience. Now, the 14 people that are on this committee, and I'm not going to divulge my age, but I just figured out yesterday that I have over 85,000 hours of crane experience. So I left it in there because, like I said, I'm the one that wrote it, so who's to blame but myself, all right? So what I'm getting at, there's probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours of crane experts on this CTAG committee. All right. What did I just say? Hours? I know that. Well, that's, I wanted to leave it in there because, actually, I won't divulge information, but someone gave me this slide and he's no longer here, so I'm not going to blame him, all right? All right, well, also, talking about all major cranes, broad range of industries, it says we've met 12 plus times. Yes, we have. And then it says, made 30 most similar terminations. And yes, we have as a CTAG committee. All right. A few things about this too. OSHA's final rule, and I got to read this. OSHA's final rule on crane operator qualifications requires the crane operators to be certified, and you can see the regulation right there. However, where no accreditation certification exists, OSHA states that an operator will be deemed to have complied with the certification requirements of this section if the operator has been certified for the type that is most similar to that equipment. All right. But how are those most similar determinations to be made by and by whom? Again, that comes back to CTAG and the CCO staff and the foundation. That's where it comes from. All right. And again, here we go. Another certification or another, from the regulations and standards, 1926-1400, D2. If no equipment or no accredited testing agency offers certification examinations for a particular type of equipment, the operator will deem to have complied with the certification requirements of this section for that equipment if the operator has been certified for the type that is most similar to that equipment and for which a certification examination is available. That was 54 words. All right. 54 words. I counted them. I a little bit of background. I went to school to be an elementary school teacher, and it fits in situations like this. I will tell you, because I know some of you. All right, but after I read this, I counted the words, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, 54 words in one sentence. I remember in English somewhere, you can get a little bit redundant going over and over. But anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. The operator's certificate must state the type of equipment for which the operator is certified. Remember in the early days when it said type and capacity? All right, now it doesn't. Now it says the type of equipment, which we thank OSHA for that. All right, I waited a little bit into the program to show this because I thought if I showed this in the beginning, half of you would get up and run. So I thought I'd wait right now, and you can see this beautiful group of people. You know, I mean, there's all 14 of us. You know, maybe a couple of us have changed over the years. You know, but this is the present of the CTAG. This is who we are. So I would like to thank all the fellas and ladies and lady that's a member of the CTAG committee for all the hard work that you've done. All right, CTAG, just a background here real quick. Scheduled, you see the first meeting was in May of 2017, and we've had other meetings clear up, and this goes to 2019. Now, we have had some other meetings. You know, the most recent meeting of CTAG was in May of 2021, and that was a virtual meeting. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are in October of 2022. So just remember, I just said virtual meeting of May of 2021. We'll get into that in a minute also. All right, the CTAG activity, you can read these here. 2019, the number of inquiries, 2020, 2021, 2022, 3 referred to, 1 open. And I will say this, the 1 open right now, it's already been closed, but it was open because the way you do this is you contact, you know, the CCO Foundation through their website or through a member or somebody like that. And then after what they can do, then they can send, you know, either talk to them or send in questions about most similar type of equipment. And then what they can do, hopefully we'll get back with them. And you'll see a little situation here, how that works. And I can't read that from here. So what happens is you get an inquiry, you know, and what it's done then, you can read this yourself. It goes to the CTAG committee. All right. Now, if we can handle it, or the staff can handle it, then it's left right there. If it doesn't, if we can't handle it, then it goes over to, it's called the Board of Directors. They look it over. If they didn't like what we had to say, talking about the CTAG committee, then it comes back to us. Then after we look at it, and if we make a final decision or change our decision, then it goes back to them, and then the Board of Directors approves it. All right, and if you look up here right now, you will see how to go onto the website. This is the directory. This is all, you know, how to get all your questions answered about CTAG. All right, CTAG is broken down into 3 parts. I'm just going to read the types right there. Containing the determinations made for cranes. This is type of equipment, part 1. Containing determination made for cranes for which no known accredited agency exists. Then we've got part 2, type of installation made for cranes for which an accredited certification does exist, but whose installation, application, or the use of which they are being put may call the type of certification into question. And then type D, or I should say part 3, by a specific model and brand made regarding a specific brand and or model of lifting equipment with unique characteristics for which the appropriate certification is under. Determination may be applied to other similar equipment made by other manufacturers. All right, a lot of you all don't know this, and a lot of you do know this now. Again, my background is overhead and gantry cranes. That's what I've grown up with. I know something about mobile cranes. I know a lot of people in this room, their background has to do with mobile cranes. So this is, I'm just trying, maybe you'll learn something for the next 3 minutes here before I end my routine here. All right, here we got what we call jib cranes. All right, all 3 of these are either what we call freestanding, post, or fixed jibs. All right, what makes these similar is they all have rotation up to 360 degrees. Right? They have a trolley travel that can go forward and reverse. Then they have a hoist function up and down. Well, when you compare that to an overhead crane, because you can see by type of equipment, jib crane, most similar certification, an overhead crane. What we in CTAG determined was operating characteristics for these cranes right here made them most similar to overhead, because overheads do the same thing. They run, they have bridge travel, they don't rotate. Well, yes, they do. Polar cranes do. But anyway, they do have trolley travel and hoist up and down travel. So this is type, or part one, I should say. Part two, here we go into a wind turbine service crane. As you can see, the photo on the left, this is mounted to the top of a wind turbine. And as a group, we looked at this and we came to a conclusion in the CTAG committee that after you look at this, it does rotate 360 degrees. It's got a boom that goes up and down hydraulically as retract and extend functions hydraulically. But this type, you can see on the end, there's no winch or anything like that installed. So what we did, this was not mounted to a chassis or a body of a truck crane or of anything like that. So we put this one into the articulating boom crane category. And then the third one, as you can see this, the Palfinger PK680TK. We looked at this one. This one had the same operating characteristics again of an articulating boom crane, but this particular unit is mounted to a chassis, and it also has, as you can see there, it's got a winch on it. So we threw this one, I don't want to say threw it in, we debated sometimes well into the night on which categories these do fall in, and that's where this one ended up. All right, now here's where I get to have a little fun on my part. Like I said, this has been really hard on me. So now I get to enjoy this. Here we've got a mobile, what we call gantry crane mobile. All right, you see that word mobile. The only reason it's a mobile crane is, or you think it is, because it's on rubber tires. Well, it's not a mobile crane because it has girders. This one has a double girder, and it's got two or dual winches, and then it's got a hoist that goes up and down. It's got two trolleys that go back and forth. So we, as a group, we decided this was going to fall into the overhead type, overhead crane. All right, then we go, this is another picture. You can see this one. It's basically the same one I just showed you. I wanted to show you that. I'm running out of time, so she's not going to stop me until I'm done. And this is an overhead crane. And I got to ask somebody in here, tell me why this is considered an overhead crane. Very good. You at home that didn't hear that, someone said overhead. I mean, that person is smart. I mean, let me tell you. Overhead crane, they're above you, they're over your head, that's why they exist. But if you think about it, all cranes are over your head. But one thing you don't do, you don't get under the load. So there we are. I said that part of it too. I could go through all these parts, but this is not a training class. So there's a gantry crane. Gantry crane. We got a gantry crane. This is called a single girder gantry crane. Just gantry crane, but it falls into the overhead family because guess what? Overhead and gantry cranes, the wheels run on top of a rail just like a train track, all right? But it's not a train track, it's a crane track, all right? Let's get that right. So it sits up there, and that's what they do. All right, this was a single girder top running bridge crane with an underhung hoist. I'm running through these. And here's another little post jib like we saw earlier, just a little smaller. And I'd like to throw this out because this is called a gantry crane or container crane. This is where we get all of our products here in the United States. They come into a port. This is what they unload all those with. And that's how you get all your kids' Christmas presents at home. And last but not least, we talked about the past, present, and future. All right. I just like to say that over the years, you can see what CCO will do to you.
Thank you, Fred. That was fantastic. Appreciate it, and appreciate you giving us a view into the future as well. So our last presentation here is going to be pre-recorded. Unfortunately, Sarah Fueling with AEM couldn't be here today, but we do have a pre-recorded presentation from her. I will just give a quick overview or a quick background and introduction for her anyways. Sarah Fueling is the Senior Director of Construction. She joined the Association of Equipment Manufacturers in 2018 and was promoted to her current position in 2021. Sarah is the go-to industry resource for AEM within the construction equipment sector. Prior to joining AEM, Sarah spent nearly 10 years with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation in heavy highway construction and project management. Sarah holds a bachelor's degree in civil structural engineering and a master's degree in civil engineering, both from the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Wisconsin. The CCO Foundation, through our founder Grant Brent, has had the privilege of working with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers and SCNRA to help put together the education sessions for the upcoming 2023 ConExpo. So while Sarah couldn't be here today, she did want to provide an overview of what things you can expect. And Brittany, can you hit the play button there? Hopefully that will come through.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hewling, Senior Director of Construction with AEM, the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. I'm here today to share some exciting changes and new features that you can expect to see at ConExpo ConAg 2023, along with the world-class educational opportunities in cranes, rigging, and aerial lifts. Nothing brings the industry quite together like ConExpo ConAg, where we are taking construction to the next level, reflecting on the growth and momentum of the construction industry. There's something for everyone at ConExpo ConAg, connecting innovators, equipment manufacturers, and construction professionals from every major construction sector. Here, you'll meet the people who make the machines, discover new technologies, and build relationships in the construction community, all leading to new opportunities to improve your business, become more efficient, and grow your place within the industry. The best in construction come to ConExpo ConAg because they are driven to take themselves to the next level. Construction is now complete on West Hall and Diamond Lot, which gives us an even bigger and better campus for ConExpo ConAg 2023. This also provides a much more natural and direct connection between the Las Vegas Convention Center and the festival grounds, allowing us to enhance your attendee experience. You will also note the dotted line connected Diamond Lot, Silver Lot, and South Hall. This is the loop, which was also under construction right below our feet during ConExpo ConAg 2020. What was a 20-minute walk across campus is now a 2-minute free ride. The addition of West Hall and Diamond Lot allowed us to make some exciting changes to our footprint, rearranging the extensive product categories to better align with your attendee experience. One of the most notable changes is aggregates, asphalt, and concrete will all be located indoors in Central Hall. With this additional space, there will be no exhibits or structures in the Bronze Lot, which means outdoor concrete has moved to Diamond Lot, with outdoor aggregates and asphalt remaining in Silver Lot. Again, providing a more cohesive experience as you explore different product categories. If you recall, ConExpo ConAg 2020 featured the tech experience in Silver Lot, the orange star on the screen. This was a significant space dedicated to the future of technology on the construction job site. We heard from our attendees, though, that they would prefer to see technology integrated into the show and relevant to specific product areas. We were able to build on this feedback and feature technology within product categories in the next level discovery zones, one in North Hall, one in Central Hall. These zones will feature products that are not only new to the show and new to market, but also solve a common industry problem in a unique and innovative way. Along with the next level discovery zones, we have launched the inaugural Next Level Awards, open to all ConExpo ConAg exhibitors. 10 finalists will be selected and highlighted at ConExpo ConAg, with you, our show attendee, voting on site to determine the Contractor's Choice Award winner. And one of the most exciting changes are next level education opportunities. We are thrilled that education has a new home in West Hall. This new location increases foot traffic and ease of access to the rest of the show, allowing you to more seamlessly integrate education into your show experience in a central location. Along with the new location, we heard your feedback and have made some schedule adjustments, including later starts, earlier stops, shorter sessions, and avoiding the lunch hour, allowing you to participate in education while still experiencing all that the show has to offer. ConExpo ConAg 2023 features over 150 sessions over 4 days in the 10 primary tracks shown on the slide. Secondary tracks include emerging technologies, international, legal and regulatory, risk management, and sustainability. Our comprehensive education program is the leading source for contractors, business owners, and construction professionals to obtain cutting-edge information for today's industry challenges, emphasizing industry issues and trends, focusing on peer-to-peer brand-agnostic information. On the screen is a list of the sessions within the Cranes, Rigging, and Aerial Lifts track. These sessions range from crane basics in Crane 101 to the importance of contract language in crane contracts and everything in between to help you be successful in your lifting operations. None of this content would be possible without the support of our education partners, including NCCCO Foundation and Graham Brent, Chair of the 2023 Education Committee. So thank you, Graham and NCCCO. A quick overview of some of those sessions. In Cranes 101, speakers from the Crane Industry Council of Australia will help you give an understanding of selecting the right crane for your project, understanding the importance of site prep before a crane arrives on a job site, and learn what your job site team needs to understand when a crane is on site. The target audience for this session is those that have cranes on their job sites, but are not necessarily crane operators or experts. In qualifications of on-site personnel for cranes, Thomas Sickelsteel, CEO of NCCCO, will share the updated ASME Consensus Standard qualifications for on-site personnel for cranes effective December 2022, as well as potential updates to the OSHA Compliance Directive regarding operator qualifications, and provide a roadmap to ensure you are in compliance with the law and the latest industry standards. In Crane Lift Planning Essentials, Ben Gherkin from Industrial Training International will provide interactive lifting scenarios and help you understand what considerations and factors to take into account for successful lift planning, including load weight, center of gravity, rigging methods, and lift and set sequences. In Crane Contracts, speakers will review contract language and help you understand how one word in that contract or work ticket can negatively impact the settlement of a claims case, potentially saving you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Additional information about education, including the full schedule and additional session descriptions, can be found on our website at conexpoconag.com/show-experience/education. And last, but certainly not least, registration is open. We are excited to offer an NCCCO Foundation stakeholders discount up to 50% off of the prices shown on the slide. You can register directly through NCCCO Foundation. Be sure to sign up for show alerts and stay up to date on the latest news and excitement leading up to the show at conexpoconag.com. That's all for me. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas, March 14th through 18th, 2023. Thank you.
So thanks to Sarah for doing that video again. We're going to take a short break. Let's make it 10 minutes to try to get back on time. So 10-minute break, and then we'll be back in this room. Thank you. So it's my pleasure to now introduce Tom Sickelsteel. Tom is the CEO of the National Commission for the Certification of Crane Operators, CCO. Mr. Sickelsteel is also a voting board member of the ASME B30, ASME B30.29, and an alternate on the B30.5. Tom serves on the boards of 8 other companies and associations. Prior to joining CCO, Mr. Sickelsteel served as general manager for Levitt Cranes USA, branch manager for Barnhart Crane and Rigging, as well as president of Sickelsteel Cranes, Inc. Under his leadership, SCI won multiple national and regional safety awards. Mr. Sickelsteel was a stakeholder for the Washington State Crane Administrative Code Committee and Select Committee. Tom has served as a subject matter expert for the Washington Crane Certifier exam, construction hoist exam, as well as the CCO lift director exam and crane type advisory group. Tom, please give us an update on the developments and certification. Thank you.
Very much appreciated, TJ. Excited to be here today and talk a little bit about what we're doing in certification. For those of you who've been around the week, this is also the CCO Commissioner Week. We've been talking a lot about these issues, a lot about these things. And so this is our chance to spread it to the broader family of those who are participating in the industry forum. So with that, I just wanted to give a little background to who CCO is. CCO is one of the 4 accredited crane operator certification bodies. You can see that we have 205 subject matter experts. Those are volunteers that volunteer their times. We do pretty close to 135,000 exams a year. So that's a lot of exams that we do. Last year, we exceeded 15,000 exams in 1 month. We did that 2 months in a row, which seems like a lot. It felt like a lot. And we're really focused on load handling equipment and the people that work in and around them. So largely our initiatives for 2022 has been converting over from paper pencil testing, and as John kind of went through the reasons why, computer-based testing as well, and moving to event online testing and online proctored testing. The reasons, not only did John give good indication about why related to exam security, but it also allows for immediate scoring. It allows for schedule flexibility and a lot of things that CCO hasn't been known for in the past. And so we're really excited about bringing these things online over the 2023 timeline and that sort of thing. So just to give you this, the timeline for paper pencil, we're moving into My CCO portal, and that's going to be a key step to being able to register yourself, register for exams and those kinds of things. And it's where all the applications will be at. That will be available starting in December. And you can see for paper pencil itself, that's where all these compromises that John had talked about, that will be sunsetted at the end of 2023. And a variance will be required if you're going to go beyond that. We realize that there's situations where a paper pencil exam is required because maybe you're working in a nuclear space or some space where no computers are allowed, and we want to be able to provide that variance. But that will be a variance process as of 2024. So we have this next year to kind of transition over to the other systems. We are also sunsetting the LBC, LBT exams, and that's going to become an LAT, so a singular lattice boom crane exam. And we are also simplifying our load charts, and all of that rolls out the first part of January. For computer-based exams, the load charts and the LBC sunset also occur in January. Because it's computer-based and things happen, you buy things in advance, but you're able to use a token a little bit later. The sunset of the conversion to the LAT doesn't occur until right after, so February 1st. But everything else on this remains pretty much the same. And you can see the CBT is sunset as well by the end of 2024. The reason there's an asterisk there is because we're still kind of figuring out what we're going to do with accommodations. And there's the potential that we may need some type of computer-based testing to address accommodation needs. And so that's why there's an asterisk there. Event online testing. Again, everything has the same MyCCO portal application process that starts in December. But we actually have testing personnel that we have to get online and accredited. And so the online testing personnel for the event-based, that will start occurring in January 9th. The materials to get trained through our LMS, our learning management system, will be available, as well as the credentialing pathways. We're going to allow testing to be arranged by February 1st. It's not a requirement, but by the end of the year of 2023, it's expected that we move away from paper pencil, because that'll be done, and move into systems such as this. The other option out there that we've now created, and we got approval just recently from ANAB on our last assessment, was actually an online proctored testing, and we call that OPT. The OPT testing is you can have your computer wherever you want. It has to be a sanitary room. There needs to not be a lot of noise, but if you think like a cubicle in a library or somewhere like that, those work. A little office space works as well. And you have an online proctor. There's one proctor to every 3 people, and they review and watch you take the exam. You can't see them watching you until you do something wrong, and then they come up and they say, "You're doing something crazy. Let's start over," or let's stop doing that. So that whole process it was really easy for CCO because for us, there's not really testing personnel involved in that, so we don't have to credential any of that because it's part of our system that we already approved. So that's going to be available starting 1/9. This gives people flexibility. It's a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year that you can register for the exams and that sort of thing. I want to talk a little bit about the tablet testing and that sort of thing. We have mobile crane operator practical exams, and we have tablet testing that we're going to bring online for a lot of that. This tablet testing is going to come into play July of next year, but we are already working on what does it look like, how does it work with a tablet, can a person hit the timing button, and a lot of that stuff. We will be beta testing this in the probably March, April, May timeline. We'll start out with beta testing, and by July it'll be available, and then tablet testing and that stuff could be done at the end of the year as well. So all of these cycles, kind of January 1, 2024 is when they'll be expected to be in play. That's what this shows you here on this slide, and you can see it has the same thing. It has an LMS process for training the proctors and the test site personnel. Tablet release, it gets released in July 1st, and then it finally is out and required by January. One of the other items, and John hit this too, and I just wanted to highlight that we're transitioning the card. A lot right now, it has a lot of the certification designations and those sort of things, and while it's been great to be able to catch fraudulent ones based on the order, we're really going to the QR code is going to be the key thing. And so you'll start seeing that in 2023 is just the QR code. So for those of you trying to cheat, that's where it's going. In 2022 initiatives also for My CCO app, we've kind of had this app before, and we've been developing stages. First, it was just kind of register, that sort of thing. And then it was, what are my certifications? And then we've added in exams and those sort of things. And so as the My CCO app now becomes the main place, we'll be asking for email authentication and a lot of different elements. And the intent there is to make sure that we can communicate with you, whether it's results, whether it's recertification windows, whether it's a lot of times we'll say, hey, you have a recertification coming up on this in 12 months. Here's the steps, and help people get recertified. A couple of programs I wanted to highlight. The concrete pump operator program got underway. Right now, it's just a written exam. The practical exam is going to be released in 2023. It's a 5-year certification. We've already had a number of people take this exam, and so we're excited about that. It's got off to a pretty good start. But it's something that now we're developing and that sort of thing. So this has been an area that we continue to build. One of the items that was under the most similar was telehandlers, and rotating and non-rotating telehandlers has been a focus on that. And so we are issued also a call in 2020 for a task force. We built that. We built an exam blueprint. We have 2 certifications, and we're seeking to make it compliant with 1910, 1926, and B56.6. And there's some different rules in there about timelines and windows, but it's going to be a 3-year certification. So this one will be a little bit shorter, and that aligns with 1910 and the B56.6. So we're excited about this program. It'll be coming out the end of this year. And this will be a focus for us at ConExpo. You'll be able to do a bunch of testing and some other things. And one of the last areas I want to talk about is our crane operator evaluator program. One of the things that OSHA has as far as evaluation is that you need to be a qualified evaluator of an operator. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a qualified operator. It's a different characteristic. And what we found is across the country that there's been inconsistency on how we are qualifying our evaluators. And so CCO is meaning to step into this and make sure that we are setting a national standard for what it means to have an evaluator that is qualified. The call for task force members is going to be going out here over the next couple of months, weeks, maybe, days, possibly. And the target for the release, they're going to start meeting in January of 2023. And by the end of that stuff, by the first part of 2024, we hope to have this program out. I'm really excited about this because there are things that we can do as an organization. We know how to test people, we know how to assess people, and so we can bring some of those skills to this area of an operator evaluator, and we're excited about developing this program. With that, I would just say, here's the many ways to stay connected to CCO. There's lots of different things that we're up to. We've been really super busy in development and of programs and how we're delivering tests and exam, and these are just the many different ways. For those of you, I know there's a really long link there for the CCO online newsletter. There's an easier way to get there on our website. At the bottom, you can click on it pretty easily. But what I would say is it's really important to stay up to speed with where we're going on a lot of stuff. We tend to lead the pack, and so it's important to see where stuff is going. We are, as far as the OPT exams, it's really neat to be one of the first organizations doing that in our industry, and that sort of thing. And so we're setting some new standards there, but it's things that we're really excited about. So with that, I know that there's a panel, and I'll be happy to answer questions as part of the panel later.
Thank you very much, Tom. You took the words right out of my mouth. So I appreciate you giving that update, and then look forward to all the questions that will happen at the Q&A panel at the end. Our next presenter comes to us via Zoom again. She joins us. It's Ms. Stephanie Davy McNeely. She's been in and around the career technical education space for nearly 20 years. Serving with Sacramento Builders Exchange and the ACE Mentor program of Greater Sacramento back in 2003. Working with local industry leaders, ACE Sacramento became one of the fastest growing affiliates in the country at that time. Ms. Davy McNeely then took on the role of Regional Director, West of the ACE Mentor Program of America, before moving with her family to New Orleans, Louisiana. There, she oversaw fundraising and workforce partnerships for the Foundation for Louisiana's Community and Technical Colleges, and led development efforts at Ursuline Academy, the oldest Catholic school for girls in the United States. In 2019, Stephanie returned to her ACE roots in the role of Director of Development and Strategic Partnerships. There, she is responsible for all of the national fundraising initiatives, as well as the growth and development of national partnerships with design and construction firms and like-minded associations. Looks like we can see you, Stephanie. Thanks for joining us. And if we can hear you, please take it away.
Can you see me, hear me, and see my PowerPoint?
We can. Thank you.
Oh, that's so great. I made the technology work. I'm so proud. Well, look, thank you for having me so much today. I really wish I could have been there in person, but it seems like so many things are happening this week. So I'm happy to do this from my home in New Orleans. So thank you for having me. Some of you may be familiar with ACE. I'm going to do a little bit of an overview, and then we'll watch a really cool video about some of the work we're doing around trades. This is our mission statement. It's always been our mission statement. Not only do we want to get our students, who are high school students, excited about careers in the construction and design industry, but we want to support them through their continued advancement into that industry. So if you're familiar with ACE, if you've been around ACE, and we'll talk about kind of our geographic map in a little bit. But if you've done that, then maybe you think of us more as like a 4-year college track program. And in the past 5 years, that's really changed. So we'll talk about that as we kind of move forward through this presentation. It is a free after-school program. It's open to any high school student that is curious about our career pathways. We are in 77 locations. That's kind of where we are right about now, all across the country, and one in Canada. When we say location, that's an affiliate, which means that it's a metro area. So for example, here in New Orleans, we serve the New Orleans proper and kind of the metro area around us. And the same goes for most of the cities that we serve. I have the pleasure of working for the national office. There's only 9 of us that get paid to do this work. The rest of us are volunteers, which we have 4,000 volunteers across the country. This is kind of a little snapshot of what our map looks like. Like I said, more than 70 affiliates in 36 states. In a typical year, we do serve about 10,000 students, about 7,500 to 8,000 graduate from our program. The COVID year, of course, we had to go hybrid in some locations. We had to go completely virtual in other locations. And even though I'm talking to you from Zoom today, I think we know that virtual is not always best. And so we did lose a significant amount of students last year, ending the year around 7,000 total served. So we're really proud of that, considering all the challenges that come with virtual programming. But this year we're on pace to be back up to 10,000. So we're excited about that. We also give away about $2.6 million in scholarships annually. And that number is just updated. We're over 28 million now in scholarships since our inception, which was about almost 30 years ago now. And when we say scholarship, we're referring to any kind of continuing education. So if our students want to enter a trade program, they want to go to a community college, they want to go to a 4-year program, they're eligible for scholarships as long as they're going into one of our career pathways. Real quick, some impacts of ACE. We know that ACE students have a higher graduation rate than the national average. We also know that 95% of our students enroll in some form of postgraduate education. So they are pursuing a career pathway. 70% of them enter careers in design and construction. And we also are really proud of our diversity numbers. About 70% of our students identify as people of color, and 40% of our students identify as female, which is well above the national trend for construction. I wanted to give you some quick highlights from our program report so you could kind of get an idea where the data lies, and then we'll talk about some specific programming on the other end. So like I said, our program offers scholarships. We also offer alumni scholarships as folks start to get through their career. We all know inflation, prices do not stay the same. So we try to offer our alumni scholarship and ask them to stay in touch with us as well. You can see the chart on I guess it's on the right of my screen, that some of our programs, one of the things we learned from COVID was that we can offer our program virtually, but we don't believe it works the best that way. So it is a full year school program. So students are meeting every other week for the course of 16 to 19 weeks with their mentors, working together on a project from design conception all the way through their safety site plan, all the way through their equipment plans, to building it. And we say building it, which really means they just probably build a model of it. And then they give that presentation to at the very end of the year at their final presentation scholarship banquet to parents and friends of the community. I like to say, pitch us your project like you're pitching it to an owner. So it didn't function too well virtually this year. Most people will be in person. And then I put our DEI stats up there because I don't think we talk enough about that. We work really hard to have a diverse group of students, understanding the current trends in the industry. So that's just a bar graph to show what our affiliates are working on when it comes to diversifying their student population. There's a little bit more demographics about our students from the prior year. We actually just got our information in for this coming year. But I talked about the female student increase, which has kind of steadily increased over the past few years. And the other data point to note on this slide is that 49% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch, which is pretty much a low income indicator. That's the best indicator we have of student socioeconomic status. And as you can see, the ethnic identity, we are well in front of the national trend on that as well. ACE for the trades. So we talked about scholarships, we talked about pathways. We talked about all of our locations and kind of generally how our program works. And one of the things that we've done over the past few years, our larger cities have hosted trades days. And trades days are a day that affiliate, let's give an example, Los Angeles. Los Angeles has one day where they bring all of their students from all of their teams. And, you know, that city has a lot of teams. So it could be, you know, 400 students to a site. And on that site, those students are exposed to all the various craft training professionals that would work on a typical job site. And the thing about this day that's so important is that it's not just a job fair, but it's really a hands-on experience. So they'll move from station to station and get exposed to all of the different trades that are working on that job. And I know TJ and I have talked a lot about some of the work you've done with some hands-on training for high school students. We are pre and post surveying our kids, so we know what they like and what they didn't like. We're well open to partnerships with anybody who wants to come to these sites. And we got a huge grant this year from Stanley Black & Decker to expand our trades days from, it was at about 4 places pre-COVID, and we're going to expand to about 20 this year, and we're going to reapply, hopefully expand to 30 locations next year. So I'm going to send this out after the fact and ask you guys to please contact me if you want to be involved in a trades day. But I am going to show you a video that explains it so much better than me. We're just going to need to see if I can handle the technology. Hold on just one second. Let's see if I can do it. All right.
My name is Kim Gardner. I work with Turner Construction Company and also a board member for the ACE Mentor Program here in Charlotte. So we're here at The Rock today doing our ACE Trades Day. We are allowing high school students to gain a little bit of hands-on experience in carpentry, steel, masonry, lift driving, electrical, and low voltage. Well, construction is not necessarily the most glamorous profession. So we're really trying to focus on the trades because of the workforce shortage that we have and all the construction that is going on across the country. So we're hoping to catch students early, let them know that this is a viable career.
Hi, my name is Margaret Thornton, and I work for CPCC, which is Central Piedmont Community College, but I work here at The Rock, which is Rebuilding Opportunities for Construction. And we are so welcoming the ACE folks here today to have Trades Day and bring all the high schoolers that are part of the city over here so that they can enjoy the day with us. And we've got people, different companies here set up so that students can really experience, you know, different things. And it's really cool just to see the kids. They're intrigued and excited.
If it wasn't for ACE, I wouldn't be in construction management. ACE started at my high school. I was a student in Atlanta, 2005, my senior year, and Turner Construction, Holder, Skanska were some of the major leaders of the ACE program there, and I was introduced to construction. By being in the ACE program, I was exposed to industry professionals at a young age, and I kind of kept those relationships so that when I got to a point where I was looking for some experience during college, I could connect with those same professionals and they connect me with an internship. So that's probably, for me, the best thing that came out of ACE. Thank you to all the volunteers, mentors, and students for attending our ACE Trades Day program today.
So hopefully that worked for everybody, I hope. I guess TJ, you'll tell me if it didn't, right?
The thing that's different about a Vrbo vacation home, you always have the whole place to yourself. Just you and your people.
There you go. I think you stopped it.
Oh, good. And you're back to my slideshow?
Hi, dropshippers. It's
Okay,
time to
good. So,
focus on
maybe I
what
can
you
handle
do
technology
best.
more than-
Now we can
So go to
clear.
wix.com/dropshipping.
All right, hold on. Make it go away. Oh, now it's just playing all the cool YouTube videos that my son probably watches. Okay. If you guys want to watch kids building with Legos, that's usually what he's watching. So let's try that again. Better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure it'd be entertaining to watch my son's YouTube videos, but probably not. So that's Trades Day. That's kind of an older video, but I like to play it because I think it captures what we're trying to do. And like I said, we've so far hosted 15. We have about 8 more coming up in the next couple months. So definitely shoot me a note or drop a line in the chat if you want to find out where those are and want to try to get involved, even just to attend to kind of see what a day looks like. But like I said, one of the things we've really tried to focus on in the past few years is what our board is calling throughput. And we know that we do a great job of exposing students to our industry, but the question is, do we do a great job of actually getting them there? And we really didn't know the answer. And so about 2 years ago, in the middle of COVID, we took on an extern intern program where we offer high school students the opportunity to extern at some of our partner firms with the goal that they'll hire them on full time. This is a main goal of our executive committee right now. And I like to show the Mortenson example because one, it demonstrates, what a true commitment to workforce development can do. And then also, how long it can take if you're working with high school students to get them. And actually, I think I heard they hired 1 more for this year. So they've been really intentional about it. They've been mentoring an ACE. They've been taking those ACE students, putting them into internships directly on their job sites. Then, depending whether they took a college track or a trade track, putting them into jobs and internships, and then hiring them on full time when they were finished with their training. So those are ways to get involved. So there's mentoring is always number one. We can't do it without our volunteers. Coming to a Trades Day is a great way to get exposed to it, to meet the leaders, to see who in the community is involved with ACE. And hiring interns is always an answer. We're always looking for places to place our interns. We placed a little over 600 last year, and we're looking to place 900 this coming summer. But I also like to put this slide up to tell you that there's so many ways to get involved. So if 16 to 19 weeks as a mentor sounds like a lot, sounds like a time commitment, there are so many ways to do it. Just recruiting students, helping put local affiliates in touch with schools you work with, serving on committees. We're always looking for folks to serve in leadership roles on the board. One of the things about our mentor teams is they really look like the communities that they serve. So the New York team maybe doesn't look like the Omaha team, and we really want to make sure it reflects its own community. So having local folks sit on boards really helps with that. You can also help create curriculum. I think it would be really cool to have a Crane curriculum. So maybe we can talk about that coming up. We also have special events. And then there's the mentors, team leader, and guest speaker. If you feel like you can't commit to a full year of mentoring, we always welcome folks to guest speak. So that's a lot of talking from me. This is my contact information. I always ask folks to follow us on social if that's something that you do. I would love to take questions if you have any. I know I talk really fast, but I also wanted to keep you guys on time. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask if there's any questions.
Yeah, I was gonna, so we probably have time for one question. If there's anything, Bob, is there any questions back there in the coming through, or did you got?
Mic on. Yeah, there's one. What advice do you have when we're faced with the longstanding push for kids to go to a 4-year college no matter what? That seems to be a continuing push.
Yes.
Any advice?
So one of the things I didn't mention when I talked about Trades Days is it's not just for students, it's also for parents. So my advice would be to engage the parents in the conversation and also the school counselors. That's another place that we've invited them to come to our Trades Days to see what it's about and to see how the students can really have a rewarding career.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Appreciate it. I recommend everybody reaching out to Stephanie and finding out more about ACE Mentor and the great work that they do. Thanks again, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah. So now we're going to transition to another online speaker, Mandy Keim, who is going to talk to us about mental health in the workplace. Mandy is a Central Washington University alumnus of the Safety and Health Management Program and currently serves as the Director of Safety for AGC of Washington. She also has a bachelor's degree in foreign language and teaches Spanish for supervisors in the construction industry. She recently earned her master's degree in safety and health management and published a thesis in employer best practices practice guide on mental health interventions in construction. Mandy has worked in AGC's safety department for 20 years, helping members with safety programs, training, doing safety team inspections, working on legislative regulatory issues pertaining to safety, and serving on various safety committees. Mandy currently serves as the co-chair of the AGC of America Chapter Safety Leadership Committee. Mandy enjoys spending time camping and traveling with her family, including her 14-year-old daughter and 10-year-old triplets. Mandy was the only safety professional selected by the construction business owner for the 2019 class of top 20 outstanding women in construction from 200 nominees, and was featured in their November 2019 issue. Looks like we can see you and see your screen, Mandy, so thanks very much for being here.
So hopefully you can hear me too. That's the last hurdle we have to get over.
We sure can.
Yes, things are going our way. All right, thank you, TJ. TJ let me know that I need to abbreviate my presentation here to get you guys back on track, which I'm happy to do. So I'm going to start by just saying, first and foremost, thank you for being here. Thank you for making space and time for us to have a conversation about mental health. Boy, maybe I should cut my bio down and that would have made even more time. Anyway, so as the Director of Safety for AGC, I've been passionately advocating for mental health and suicide prevention in the construction industry for a number of years now. And so we're going to get right into it. I'm going to share some resources. So please have your phones ready, because there's QR codes built into this presentation that you can take captures of and get to these free resources. Let's see if I can. There we go. All right. So true or false, construction workers die more often due to suicide than all other workplace sources. Normally in a different environment, we would have actually had a dialogue about this, but I'm just going to tell you it's true. In 2019, CDC reported that there were 10.2 per 100,000 construction fatalities that happened on the job. In that same time period, we had 53.2 per 100,000 workers die by suicide. That's on the job and off the job. So in essence, as someone who works in the construction industry or around the construction industry, you are 5 times higher or 5 times more likely to die by suicide than on the job, hazards or issues. So I get questioned about this a lot and why we should be talking about it. That's one reason, but here's a few more. Suicide in 2019, again, reported by the CDC, was the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States, claiming the lives of over 47,500 people. For me, as a mom of 4, this next statistic rings and cuts real close to home. Suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death amongst individuals ages 10 to 34. So those are our very early career professionals getting into the industry. That is also our youth that are the future of our industry that we're trying to recruit into this industry. It is the 4th leading cause of death of people ages 35 to 44. We employ a lot of people in that age demographic. And then lastly, just another really uncomfortable statistic is that there's nearly 2.5 times as many suicides as there are homicides in the United States. 47,511 American citizens lost their life to suicide. So that means you are 2.5 times more likely as an American to die by your own hand than you are by the hands of others. So when people question me on whether or not this is a lane that we need to be in or a topic that we need to be talking about, yes, it absolutely is. You're more likely to die by suicide here in the United States than you are of a motor vehicle accident. You are more likely to die by suicide than you are to die by a fall in the United States. So statistically speaking, it has merit. One of the things that the pandemic did for us is a great equalizer. It allowed us to all acknowledge that maybe we're not okay, right? Be able to say, this really sucks and it's uncomfortable and I've been through some stuff and I don't like it. All of that to say, I did a master's research thesis on this subject matter, mental health interventions for construction employers, primarily because we have a problem in construction. We have a societal problem that's contributing to that. And there's a lot of research that exists that tells us that we have a problem, and there was not enough research that existed to tell us what to do about it. So I completed that research project in August of last year. It went through the Human Subjects Review Board at Central Washington University and was considered valid research worth publishing. Hence, here we are. I also know in my 20 plus years of construction experience that no person is going to voluntarily read a 50-page research thesis to figure out what to do. So I boiled that down into a best practices guide with 8 actionable items linked to either workers being inspired by them or employers finding these processes effective in practice. So these are people that have actually implemented this or employees that have experienced this. And so again, you're going to get a copy of the guide. I'm going to run through very quickly what those 8 items are. Providing training in mental health, promotion of your employee assistance program and insurance offerings. You know, oftentimes EAPs are underutilized. Oftentimes we only talk about the EAP and the insurance offerings once a year during re-enrollment. So we can do better in that regard. Promoting mental health and stigma reduction with stand downs or guest speakers. There's in the resource guide, tons of free open source resources. So you do not have to reinvent the wheel. You do not have to be a mental health professional. You do not have to own any of this stress or burden. It's all there for you. All you have to do is plug and play. Provide de-escalation or intervention training. There's training available through University of Washington's Forefront for Suicide Prevention, which we helped get legislatively funded for all construction workers in Washington state. We are super duper close to having that training available to every construction worker in the country for free, hosted on an LMS. We are also in talks with federal OSHA about making this an elective that is approved through federal OSHA and their outreach trainer program, that if any outreach trainer wants to include mental health in their OSHA 10 or OSHA 30 hour class, that OSHA would formally recognize that as an hour worth of content towards that, towards their requirements. So we're very close on those conversations as well. And I'm just super proud to have worked with people at federal OSHA, Agency of America's Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Task Force in making these things as available and as accessible as possible, and really partnering all of the right players in the right places so that we can start getting upstream and saving lives. Quick de-escalation technique. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you this. Nationally, we have the new 988 resource phone number, so you can call 988 and you'll be connected 24 hours a day to free and confidential help. So if someone comes to you and says that they're in crisis or indicates something that's concerning enough to you, a quick de-escalation technique, you don't have to take training. I want to make sure that I leave everybody ready to respond. Quick de-escalation technique is to just acknowledge that. Thank them for the bravery that it took for them to come forward and talk to you about their concerns and say, you know what, I'm not a mental health professional and I don't really need to be in your business, but I do really care about you and I want to make sure that you're okay. So you and I are going to step over to this private location. I'm going to call the national 988 number and make sure you have that number so you can call later too. And we're going to start this conversation. And I'm going to stay with you until you feel comfortable dismissing me and you can have your private conversation. But I care enough about you. I'm not going to sit back and let you struggle without getting you help. That's a quick way for you to engage with someone. You don't have to ask them if they're suicidal. You don't have to do any of the uncomfortable stuff. All you have to say is, I care, I'm here, and I'm helping you. So 988, save it in your phones. Also for the youth in your lives, the phone number that you want to have saved in their phones is the text line. Well, it's great for anybody, but the text line is 741-741. I'll say it again, 741-741. Make sure that the people that you care about have both of those numbers in their phones and make sure that they understand they are free, they're confidential, they're staffed with professionals who have a bevy of resources available to them to help your person through what they're struggling with. So the last 4 really quickly: provide mental health assessment resources. I believe firmly every human being should take a mental health assessment and do it on a regular basis. We can't fix what we don't measure. Next is talk about the importance of mental health routinely. You can do that in toolbox talks, meetings, company communications, social media, lots of different ways. And it doesn't always have to be heavy. We don't always have to be talking about suicide and drug overdose. We can also be talking about proper self-care and nutrition and hydration and sleep and other positive things like, healthy hobbies to pursue, those kinds of things. So there's a lot of ways that we can weave mental health into our existing programs and structure and do a very good job of supporting our teams through that. Next is a written program on mental health and resources available to them. This is not like a program telling you thou shalt protect or thou shalt practice mental health. This is really a written program on you as an organization and your commitment to the mental health of your workforce and your customers and your community, and resources that are available through that. Even better, I've already written that for you. It's a template. All you have to do is adjust it to meet your needs and you can utilize it. Lastly, posting mental health flyers and posters on the job. We need to do this in two ways: outwardly focused, so that we're showing good stewardship and we're helping reduce stigma, and also inwardly focused, putting it in places that are psychologically safe for our teams to access that information. You may think I'm absolutely nuts here, but placing them in restrooms and Santa cans has proven to be a good psychologically safe way to deliver that information. You can also do it in payroll stuffers, all those things, but restrooms seems to be a decent place to do that in a psychologically safe manner. So here's your link. You can get to the best practices guide, or your QR code, I should say. And I'll happily provide this to TJ later so he can share if anybody needs the link. But this will take you to a PDF. This is my gift to the industry. It is not branded. There's no copyright. So feel free to take it, share it with anybody that you think could utilize the resources in it. Okay. Also, construction is notorious for not practicing good coping and resilience techniques. We laugh and joke about alcohol use. We culturally are well known for having substance abuse and misuse issues. We have a high rate of substance misuse in construction. So this will take you to a toolbox talk on how to have conversations with your teams about healthy coping and resilience. And I encourage you, there's tons of free toolbox talks on all these different subjects. So if I can ever be of any assistance and point you in the right direction to these tools, if you're willing to have the conversation, I am willing to support you in having that conversation and provide you free resources. So lastly, just want to invite you all. AGC of America, like I said, has formed a national task force on mental health and suicide prevention. We host quarterly forums where we do open information sharing, and we also will introduce new things that have been developed. So that QR code will take you to sign up to get news from AGC of America, myself and Brandon, my co-chair from AGC of Missouri, who are doing a lot of the coordinating of these efforts. We're going to have a very, very impactful video series released here very soon. But if anyone is interested in participating with us, if this subject matter is interesting to you, or you just want to learn more about what's available, we're creating a complete website full of all of the free open source mental health, suicide prevention, substance misuse and abuse tools and resources that anyone can use. And it's going to be on the publicly facing part of the AGC website. So it's not password protected. You don't have to be a member to access it. We just want to make sure that we have everything that's out there and that we're putting it in the hands of people that are going to do good with it. Lastly, just want to say thank you again. Thanks for having me. Thanks for making time on your agenda for such an important topic. The QR code on your screen will take you to my contact information. You can reach out if you have further questions, if you want to get engaged, if anything that I said set off hackles in you, totally understand that too. I'm here for it. And otherwise, I'll entertain any questions if TJ says we have time.
We do have time for one question. I think, Bob, do we have any questions? Thank you, Mandy, for for your work in this area. Bob, are there any questions?
Yes. Could you talk a little bit more about some of the signs that an individual might exhibit if they need mental health intervention?
Yeah, so some of the initial signs would be things like withdrawing, letting go of certain objects and things, like giving things away, withdrawing emotionally, so not trying to connect with others, or, let's say somebody typically eats lunch with you or is up for lunch invitations and all of a sudden is like, no, things like that. Also, substance abuse and misuse can come alongside with mental health struggles. So if someone's just displaying signs of substance misuse, that might also be a trigger. Them being more tired or down or just, reserved may also be involved there. So, yeah, those are just some initial signs, but also know that some people that are struggling with mental health conditions may actually look happier and more free and more relaxed than they normally do. And so it's very hard to put our finger exactly on, what everything is to look for. But that 1 hour training that I talked to you about through Forefront for Suicide Prevention covers a whole gamut of recognizing signs and symptoms and what to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Great. Thanks again, Mandy. Thanks for all that you're doing related to this important topic of mental health.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to take a bit of my own medicine and try to make sure that my presentation is as fast as I can do it, or as fast as possible, and still cover the things I want to be able to talk about. So I'm going to take the opportunity to provide you with a brief overview of what the foundation has accomplished so far, and more importantly, what we are planning to, how we're planning to support the crane industry in the future. So I'll start with a quick history, some of the governance of the foundation for those who may not be aware. The foundation is a 501c3 charitable organization that was formed by the National Commission for the Certification of Crane Operators, CCO, back in 2018. Graham Brent was the former CCO CEO, and then actually transitioned from that into being the first CEO of the foundation. We currently have a 5-member board. It includes Gary Higdon, who's our chair, who's in the room. We have Carrie Hulse, who's our vice chair, Tim Waters, who's our secretary and treasurer, Chris Ryan and Ingo Schiller, our directors, and then Tom Sickelsteel and myself are ex officio members. The real purpose of the foundation, it was created with the intent to provide support and resources to the crane industry while allowing CCO to continue to focus on its core mission, which Tom spoke about earlier today. So what have we done to date? So as I said, it was created in 2018, so we've been in existence for about 5 years. In the first 5 years, there were a lot of different initiatives that were undertaken, so I'll just name a few. The foundation worked with SCNRF and others on the Lift and Move, Move USA program, so that to try to get youth interested in the industry. We developed 2 research reports, one on crane operator evaluation and one on virtual reality and testing. The foundation provided educational updates on the changes to the OSHA standards that Mr. Ketchum spoke about earlier today. We continue to provide and maintain the WHO's accredited directory. The foundation also began a collaboration with the Heavy Equipment Colleges of America to recognize and assist military veterans seeking crane operator certification, known as the Victor, what we call the Victor program. And then as Fred had discussed earlier, the foundation took over kind of the overall oversight of the CTAG, continued to look at the most similar type determinations. We also heard earlier the foundation has been involved in the development of the educational tracks for the 2023 ConExpo. We are supporting financially the certification scholarships through the SCNRF. And of course, the foundation continues to provide the industry valuable information through things like the industry forum. Now, all of this was accomplished within just the first 5 years in a very young organization that was looking to find its footing, and also in the face of the limiting effects of the pandemic. So as we enter our 6th year, the foundation board decided to sit down and think about how and where the foundation could best influence and impact the crane industry. To that end, and it should say developing our vision on the screen, but to that end, the board recently had a strategic planning meeting to draft the organization's vision and establish its priority goals to achieve that vision going forward. We started by developing our vision, something that sets lofty goals, but doesn't prescribe the details of how to get there. So, for example, when John F. Kennedy set the vision for our country in the space race of the 1960s, he did not say, I want us to get the best astronauts and train them really well and to build a bunch of ships and then run thousands of tests and multiple missions from Florida and Texas and eventually get somebody to space. Instead, he simply set the vision by saying we envision landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth by the end of the decade. That was something that was a vision that people could all get behind and figure out how they could get that done. So in our discussions around vision, we asked one simple but important question: is if, as a foundation, we are successful in making a significant impact, what will the crane industry ideally look like in the future? Though we're still in the process of finalizing exactly how the wording is going to be, in essence, the foundation envisions a crane industry that is the leading provider of safe and rewarding careers. Now, your first thought might be that that's very broad, and there are so many different careers out there. How will this industry compete to be seen as a leading provider of safe and rewarding careers? And that's a great thought, because that means it is a challenge and something worth working towards. But also take a second to think about what that would truly mean for this industry if that vision came true. It would mean that those currently working in the crane industry would most certainly be safer, enjoy their job more, and see the value in continuing to increase their knowledge and expertise to stay in a career that they love. It would also mean that students, veterans, career switchers, the unemployed, and the best in the construction industry would recognize the crane operator career path as one of, if not the best option for them when they're considering what to pursue. This would lead to easier identification, recruiting, and retention of qualified and skilled individuals, not to mention a workforce with higher safety acumen and reduced risk for operators and their employers. I think we can all agree that this is definitely a vision that we would all benefit from. So the next question we asked ourselves was, in what ways can the foundation best work to achieve this vision? After much discussion, the board determined that we need to accomplish 3 priority goals if we want to make the desired impact. Though not finalized, these are the 3 priority areas in general. 1, workforce development. The foundation will work to improve public awareness of careers in the crane industry and help determine the specific skills and qualifications needed to be successful in the industry. 2, education. The foundation will disseminate and enhance awareness of information that improves safety and skills development in the crane industry. 3, research. The foundation will facilitate research and data collection regarding safety, innovation, and workforce development in this industry. We believe that if we work at being the best in these 3 areas, we will eventually achieve our mission. Although these are only developed recently, and we are still working to determine the exact initiatives that we'll be undertaking in order to achieve these areas, I do want to provide just a few examples of what you can expect from the foundation in the near future. First, we intend to continue to support and improve upon the existing initiatives that support these priority areas. We plan to develop resources and tools focused on career pathway awareness, skills development and qualification identification. We are going to facilitate research projects focused on workforce development and safety that are specific to the crane industry. We are also going to identify and disseminate safety resources to the industry in collaboration with nationally recognized organizations like OSHA and the National Safety Council. These initiatives will support one another with research supporting our workforce development efforts and our education resources, and in turn, those initiatives circling back and will support further research. I look forward to this time next year when I can provide an update on our work and share the results of these first efforts. In the meantime, the foundation wants to hear from you. We need your feedback on what we are doing to make sure it's having the desired impact. Please utilize the existing resources on our website at the ncccofoundation.org and tell your colleagues to do it as well. Tell us how the resources could be improved or what else should be developed by calling and emailing us. If you have any thoughts or ideas about our vision and goals, please let us know that too. And make sure to join our email list, follow us on LinkedIn, and check our website regularly for updates on our current and new initiatives. Finally, I want to thank you for your attention and continued support. I know I speak for the entire foundation board when I say we are very excited for the future and can't wait to see what our vision and can't wait to achieve our vision and beyond. Together, who knows what we can accomplish. I'll be moderating the Q&A panel coming up, so please, if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them then. Thank you. For our final presenter, it's one I know that many of you are looking forward to. We're now going to hear an update on the ASME B30 standards activities from Eric Fidler. And as we get him pulled up, hopefully on the screen, I'm going to give him an introduction here. Mr. Fidler is the Director of Product Safety for Grove US LLC. He is responsible for mobile hydraulic crane, boom truck, and tower crane product lines. Eric is responsible for managing product safety programs and processes at the Shady Grove facility location, where specific emphasis is established in establishing and monitoring acceptance safety criteria for our products and representing the company and dealing with governmental regulatory agencies, industry standards organizations, and litigation. Mr. Fidler received his Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering degree from West Virginia University in 1989 and his Master's of Engineering and Professional Practice from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2001. Mr. Fidler is currently the ASME B30 Vice Chair, a member of the ASME B30 Main Committee and B30.29, an alternate on the ASME B30.5 and B30.23. He is also the ISO US TAG Chair and the Chairman of the ISO TC96 SC6 for mobile cranes. All right, Eric, we can see you. We don't see your screen yet, though.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, my computer locked up.
Well, you're an engineer. I'm sure you can figure it out.
Maybe
there you go.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
We can see you. We need to see your screen here.
Okay, let me get back out here a second. Share my screen again. That was what triggered it. Share.
All right, we see your screen. I just need the slides. There you go.
There we go. I apologize. Typical after hours
Oh,
work.
we can't hear you quite as well though.
Let me put on my headset then. Give me 30 seconds. I got an unstable internet message, and that's not a good sign. IT's probably running some big factor. Better? Can you hear me, TJ?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I can't hear you, but that's okay. I can hear you barely, but that's my problem. All right. Let's just go ahead. I was asked to present on behalf of Stephanie Woods. She's done this the last couple of years, so I'm going to go through it. I apologize. I'm going to be fairly quick, try to get you guys back a little bit of time because this is the last, but probably the driest presentation we have. So what I'm going to talk about is what the B30 committee has done over the last year. A little bit of background. The B30 committee has currently 28 published volumes, everything from mobile cranes, tower cranes, to using helicopters and drones in crane activities. In the last 2 years, to give you a little bit more background, in 2021, there were 6 volumes that were published, B30.5 mobile cranes, B30.7, 9, 18, 20, and 23. There was one that was scheduled to be published, which was B3022, that was delayed because of an appeal to the technical nature of the text relating to working near electrical power lines. So that standard is on hold. This year, 2022 so far, we've published 3 standards, 2 of which are in print already, and 1 is in pending in the publications department. So B3013 and B3016 are both available. B30.2 is pending. In 2021, we also published a new standard, which is using unmanned aircraft systems, UAS, or drones in the crane industry, using them in inspection, testing, maintenance, and load handling operations. So I'm going to cover a little bit of detail of what that is. And then we have 1 standard that's still under development that has not been published, and that's the B3031, which is self-propelled, towed, or remote-controlled hydraulic platform transporters. I'm going to take these in numerical order, not chronological. B30.2, that's the one that's pending publication. Primarily, we updated definitions and references, which happens with every standard, as every volume as we get to it. They incorporated the P30.1 lifting standard into their document for changed, let me get this down. And they included new language related to planned engineered lifts. They also addressed some design issues relative to bumpers. And then they also included bumpers in gantry crane applications. One thing that you'll see that the B30 is working on significantly is responsibilities of parties. We've been doing that for, oh Lord, 20 years in B30.5. It took us about 5 years to get the first list, but we've been adding to that. So what you'll see in, for example, in point 2, they updated the operator responsibilities. They added signal person responsibilities. And then they also addressed in the operations section how the requirements applied to an operator. They changed the methodology to incorporate more requirements that affect the operator. And then they also did a clarification relating to personnel competency for maintenance personnel. B30.3 tower cranes is scheduled to be published in 2024. It's on a 5-year revision cycle. A B30 volume can be on a 3 or 5-year revision cycle, and they do vary depending on which ones. What's currently approved language that will be published in 2024 is first restricting the wind speed during climbing operations to 20 miles an hour. And I will say there's nothing that would stop the committee from going back and revising these things. So these are pending publication, but in 2 years it could change. They're also revising the operator responsibilities relative to leaving the crane unattended. And they're also addressing updates to what is the plumbness requirements during erection. They've got other work going on, but this is currently what's approved language. B30.5 is on a 3-year revision cycle. It is also scheduled to be republished in 2024. What's happening with this volume currently is we've approved the incorporation of the B3030 volume, which is the rope standard. So what you'll see is a very large change in the structure as it relates to inspection, replacement of ropes. That'll all and also the construction criteria related to ropes and drums. That will all basically be withdrawn to reference B3030 unless it's a specific mobile crane only requirement. They also address the issue of people that are in proximity to lifted loads and clarified that in relationship to kind of what OSHA did with being in the fall zone. We're also updating the operator responsibilities relative to the use of operator aids. B30.5 decided not to incorporate the P30 directly because they already had lift planning in their document and they had a non-mandatory appendix. They chose to keep that instead. They updated the sections on replacement parts and repairs. Again, that's very closely matched to the OSHA 29 CFR 1926-1434, and then also the 1412 inspection related to modifications and alterations. They are going to incorporate a time interval for operator requalification that'll match what NCCO has, which is 5 years. It's what is approved. They also included an update to signal person responsibilities And we are also working on qualifications for different parties. So B30.5 has worked on and improved language related to lift director qualifications. And then we are also updating the work area figures and some of the diagrams within the volume. So you saw in the last volume, we updated the machine types, and now we're doing the work area figures. B3013 really is a unique standard, but I'm covering it because it got revised this year. Again, this one is just references and incorporation of B3030. B3016, which is the overhead underhung and stationary hoists. They added a new definition for angle of loading, and then they changed the mechanical design language to account for that definition. They incorporated ropes. They updated their inspection section, including changing or updating the tables for electric and air-powered hoists. So if you're into inspection of those types of machines, you'll want to check that out. They also wrote a new section or a new language that excludes load chain and ropes from a load test when it's replaced if it's deemed by a qualified person to be suitable. So now you don't have to do a full load test if all you've done is change the rope. B3022, which is articulating boom cranes, this is on hold. The changes that were proposed was an incorporation of B3030, signal person responsibilities were added, and also an update to the operation of vicinity of power lines. But due to some proposed changes in that section, it's being appealed by a third party, and we can't move forward till the appeal process is resolved. A new standard in 2021 was the, again, we'll just call it drones used in crane operations. The reason I wanted to raise this was I wanted to point out that it's a slightly different format, but drones, according to the standard, can be used in inspection, testing, maintenance, and load handling operations in relation to crane use. So they have 3 chapters, just like all the other volumes, but the chapters are slightly different because, for example, the first chapter relates to the characteristics of the drone. The second chapter, which is the unique chapter, instead of being inspection, testing, and maintenance as we're used to, meaning how do you inspect the crane, chapter 2 with this standard is how do you use the product to perform inspections on cranes. So it's not telling you how to check out your drone, it's telling you how to use the drone to do other operations. And then chapter 3, just like most volumes, it's focused on personnel preparations and practices for using a drone. So it goes through the responsibilities and so forth. There's a unique thing in the drone industry. So you'll see in the responsibilities language at the bottom of the slide, they talk about a remote pilot in charge, an RPIC, and a UAS operator. And it took me a little while to understand the difference. The operator is the person actually flying the drone. The remote pilot in charge is very similar to a lift director, but the lift director is included as it relates to the crane operation. The remote pilot in charge is the lift director for drone operation. Also, the P30.1 standard was revised in 2019. The standard's been out for several years. The key thing here is they added some new non-mandatory appendices. One was rigging data sheets, but they also have a non-mandatory appendix on establishing limiting wind speeds. I hope I gave you some time back, TJ, and that's it for me.
You did, Eric. So I'm going to do kind of something different since we're running short on time, but I do want to get to the Q&A panel. So I'd ask that the in-person speakers, if you can make your way up to the front for the Q&A panel. And then are there any questions for Eric, either in the room or online, or Bob?
Sorry, it took me a minute to get my mic on. Yeah, you talked about some of the things that the committee is working on right now, but do you have any crystal ball predictions about what they'd be doing in the future that you haven't mentioned, that aren't current projects?
Well, there's probably a couple of people at the front that can help answer that. we are looking at, ASME has a policy for, there's like 5 categories of future technology. We're supposed to look at things like that. I think what's happening, at least within B30, is we're focusing more on the personnel aspects relative to, cranes are cranes, steel is steel. We haven't really redesigned the technology on the crane side, but we've really focused on expanding the responsibilities, the qualifications. I think, I don't know, Tom's there and some other people in the committee, they may have more input, but like I said, I think generally, and that's what's also happening in the international standards world, you're seeing like ISO is focusing on training and inspection and maintenance and personnel activities. The one thing I think that may start coming down the pipeline is what you're seeing in the newer cranes, like the asymmetric outriggers. I think you'll see language addressing that. I suspect that within 3 to 5 years, we'll start trying to bring up the EV or the electric vehicles and hybrid vehicle technologies within the standard. But normally B30 kind of lags technology. Historically, what you'll see is the technology gets solidified within the industry, and then B30 figures out and adopts the language to cover it. The example is anti-tube lock devices started going on cranes in the 1960s. LMIs were becoming popular on all crane models in the mid to late 80s. We didn't require tube lock devices on cranes until 1992, and we didn't require RCLs on cranes or LMIs on cranes until 2002. So when you look at it from the B30 standpoint, that technology is not that old as far as its incorporation.
Oh, there's one more.
Hi, Eric. I have another question for you. Can you elaborate on the reevaluation process for crane operators? Will that be a written exam or something more than that?
The language as far as the activity itself is not changing. All we've done is incorporated a 5-year maximum period for reevaluation, comparable or similar to what the CCO and other entities are doing. So the causation for reevaluation, whether there's been an incident or a identified issue that requires it, all those rules are the same. The only thing that's changing or actually being added is that there will now be a 5-year minimum requirement, or maximum requirement. That will not hit the volume until 2024 unless something occurs, and it won't be effective until a year after that. So you really have till 2025 for that to become an effective issue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And now we have the the in-speaker panels here. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate you being here. And we're gonna, let's see, switch back to the main screen. And then, so we have a couple mics, and I know that Bob's been looking at questions that were online to see if there's anybody that's got questions for the people that are on our panel. And I know we're gonna run over a little time, but we promised a Q&A, so we'll have a Q&A. If you have a question for anybody up on the stage, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring the mic over to you. Oh, there's got to be questions. I know you guys, right? You're not shrinking violets. Well, I'll start with a question. Tom, do you have anything to add with what Eric was talking about with the B30 committee?
Yeah, there's a couple of, I know that we're looking at the inspection section. The CCO, or sorry, the ASME inspection section, we felt was outdone by what OSHA did and their inspections. And so we're looking at updating a lot of that language. There's a lack of clarity in some of the ASME language related to inspections, and things like it talks about not necessarily what to look for. It talks about noises, it talks about other things, but it's not really specific to items. And so there's a complete rewrite of the it's section 2 of the B30.5 that is starting to make its way through the process. We think once that'll happen, that will continue to move through. The only other one I will add is physical qualifications. ASME used to be at odds versus the DOT standard. And so people who had a CDL license and had those medicals, those didn't equate to an ASME standard. And that now is the case under ASME. And so we'll see the other standards start to bring that through as well and recognize that.
All right, there was another question that came in online, I think, that Bob's going to ask.
Sorry again, had to turn the mic on. This one came in for Scott, and the question was, are there regulations coming that require telehandler operators to be certified, especially rotating telehandlers? Would that be coming in the future?
The answer to that is the rules that are out for operator qualification and certification are out there for cranes right now. We do have a rulemaking on crane amendments, as I mentioned earlier, which might have some relevance in regards to definitions of what types of equipment would be covered. And if it is covered as a crane, you would go back to 1427. So roundabout, I think I answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? We have a bevy of expertise. There we go. All right, let's see. First hand over here.
So there's a MyCCO app where a certified person can check their own credentials. Is there an app or any way that an employer or a union can check the certification status of a list of people without having to punch in their numbers one at a time?
Right now, that's it's only one at a time because we didn't want people going in and using the system in a way that wasn't intended. We've heard of competitors trying to find out where their competitors' employees' statuses are when they expire and some other things. So we like to keep it one at a time right now.
Yes, for Mr. Ketchum, same question as last year and the year before. Where are we on stabilizer monitoring?
That will be addressed through our crane amendments rule. And we are ready to get that moving. I want it out soon.
Derek Thomas from Crane Elite in Florida. One of the questions I had, I spoke with Mr. John earlier regarding Spanish tests. I've noticed down in Florida, you got all types of Spanish people down there. And I know for a fact that the test in Spanish was written in Spain Spanish. I haven't met any Spain people except this one right here. And a lot of my students will take the Spanish test, and they are bombing. And so I'm wondering, is there any kind of way we can get I guess the majority of the people in the United States, I would say, is Mexican. Is there any way we can change that or get it fixed? Because it's sad when I had one of my students who's been operating for 30, 40 years, operate the hell out of a crane, but he couldn't even pass the Spanish test. And he loses his job, and that's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, I know we talked about this just a little bit. I am half Spanish, just coincidentally, from Spain. But it's an issue generally with Spanish language is the dialect from Peru to Mexico to Spain can vary significantly, and so we do rely on third-party translators, professional translators. We had folks on the committee that had, I know, Peruvian background and Mexican background, and so I think we'll just take that back as feedback. I don't know that I've heard that particular feedback before, but much appreciated. We'll definitely take it back. Really appreciate that. Yeah, and I don't know if it's Spain per se, because I don't know that we had anybody from Spain do the translation, but it's worth addressing because there's probably a predominant dialect or particular variation of Spanish that's spoken by the community that needs access to these exams, and we probably ought to be focused on looking at that language, that vocabulary. Appreciate the feedback.
Scott Ketchum, Ray Fight, Stevenson Equipment. I have a question regarding
the advisory group that was started a few years ago concerning cranes being used in the tree industry. And that was put on hold. And this might not be a fair question because it's kind of outside of construction, but I thought you might be able to shed some light on, is that advisory group going to be restarted, or is that issue about using cranes in the tree industry going to be looked at by federal OSHA?
The answer is yes. I wouldn't say that an advisory group has started per se, but the Department of Labor, OSHA, is working with the tree care industry on means and methods of removing dead limbs off of trees in a safe manner. Part of that includes using cranes in a manner that, if we were talking about in the construction industry trades, it wouldn't be permitted. And so I will say that since it's not a construction activity, our rules under 1926 wouldn't necessarily apply, but as I stated earlier, many times cranes are used for different purposes. They might go through general industry or they might be operated in construction. So I realize it has an impact, and yes, I am expressing my concerns about that regarding that. But formally right now, that is in the pre-rulemaking stage. So the tree care industry had a SBREFA, which is a small business regulatory meeting to discuss the impacts of that. And that issue did come up. And I am not running that committee in regards to that, but I have somebody who is sitting in and monitoring and seeing where it's going, if that answers your question. You bet.
Other questions, we raise your hand and I will come to you. I have a question for Kate, which is, as you're looking at technology and improving safety, any examples of whether it's this industry or other ones that, construction related, that you've looked at that have been successful and kind of a new technology that they said, oh, that's changed it for us?
Okay. Is this on? Okay, good. Sorry. So, some of the ones that we've looked at, I'm trying to think of what good examples are. The proximity sensors that I mentioned earlier, we've seen that very successful in industries. We looked at a lot of sometimes in manufacturing, also warehouse management. So we're thinking about forklifts, we're thinking about areas where there's a lot of vehicle pedestrian interactions. We've seen that be successful. The drones that were mentioned, that's always been interesting. Some of the inspection stuff I find fascinating when you can send a drone up to look at these massive bridge inspections and looking for repairs, and when you can actually send a drone up to get some of that images to take back to your expert who can look at it with their feet on the ground. Trying to think, we've been working with an aluminum extruder, a little kind of specific with metals, who's been using camera analytics and computer vision, which is one that I didn't talk about, but that's been kind of interesting. So that's when, we're training a camera. They're using it to look at a specific safety technology. It's kind of like an airbag, so it's protecting from work at heights, but they have a camera trained on it, and then it's learning to tell when it's not inflated all the way, and it'll alert someone to go in and check on that. So that's not something that I kind of came to mind the first time I heard about how to use that, but that's been working for them. They said, what's something in our plant that we want eyes on 100% of the time? And that was it, and that's how they could use it. So just some ideas.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions in the room otherwise? All right, well, it looks
I
like
can
we
add something on that.
Please.
All right, if there's no other questions. Well, did he have something else? Okay.
I was just going to say,
No, go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
On the technology side, we're noticing, especially as we're looking at heat, wearable technologies that can monitor heat stress on individuals. We're looking at that, on the effects, the physiological effects of heat on a worker. And we are now utilizing drones or SUAS, small unmanned aerial systems, to assist us in complicated inspections where it's just either too hazardous to go down and look at it, like confined space or trenching and things like that, but also going up, think about it, going up to 900 foot on a comm tower, communication tower, where there's a structural failure and something resulted in somebody tragically falling almost 1,000 feet. That's not something that we're geared up to do, to go up, climb up, free climb up 1,000-foot tower. So we're utilizing drone technology to help on that. And it's helping us quite a bit.
All right, Bob.
Fred, what's the strangest piece of equipment that CTAG has had to evaluate?
Well, the one that, there was two, the one I can remember off the top of my head was rubber tire gantry crane, because there's a couple people in here that really had a hard time determining whether that fell under mobile because it was on rubber tires, or because of the other operating characteristics of being double girder underhung trolley. So that one, because it was on tires, they tried to throw it in the mobile, but the radius doesn't change. It stays between the gantry legs, is why we came up with the overhead. Is it okay, is that it, Bob?
Is that the strangest piece of equipment?
Well, I mean, in my world, but in the mobile world, there's lots of strange things.
I would just briefly add to Fred's thing. That there's a reason that the committee hasn't had to meet a lot recently, and it's because a lot of those decisions and a lot of the weird pieces of equipment have already been addressed. And so occasionally a new piece of equipment, the Swiss Army knife kind of thing, comes out, and we have to readdress things. But now, because things are established, we have a pathway on the CTAG where staff is able to say, oh, this one is more like this, and that sort of thing. So it's been a really helpful tool, and it's helped the industry a lot get the answers to those questions.
And I'd like to add to that these different types, like I said, we have manufacturers that are probably, again, out there in the Zoom world listening to this, build some weird things. If you do that, then maybe we'll have something to evaluate and determine where they fall.
All right. That's job security for you.
I mean, that's what we are here for. CTAG, similar, most similar. And just to add one more last thing, going back to the overhead, I actually walked out. I guess there was some B30.2 comments made, maybe, because I missed the first part of it. So just so you'll know that overhead and gantry cranes fall under B30.2, and they fall under ASME B30.17, 16, you got all these other standards. I just like to throw the last word out there about the overhead and gantry cranes. Thank you.
Hey, this is Derek Thomas again from Crane Elite. I had one question. It might be silly for a lot of you guys, but I'm new to mission board and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just now understanding the practical exams, taking away the integrity that you guys promote so much. You take it away from us and you put it in the hands of someone else to come in on the job. The opposite, you're saying not to teach and go give the practical exam. I kind of find that kind of weird. When you're putting somebody on the crane, especially a school somebody's learning, you can't just put somebody on the crane and say, okay, give me a boom down, give me a boom down. They don't even know hand signals. So I don't understand how that happened, but I hear the stories, the people doing the cheating and stuff like that. I understand that. So my question to you is, why can't we record?
Yeah, so that's a great question. What I'll say, I don't know if John's going to have anything to add to this or not, but what I'll say is, under the accreditation standards, so who accredits us, there is a huge wall between, you cannot train and test. You're not allowed to do that. And so CCO in the past had said the trainers weren't testing, they were scoring. This case that came up blew that kind of argument out of the water a little bit, because the tester, the trainer who was doing the scoring, manipulated the score sheets in such a way to make it apparent that they had it figured out. Yeah. We will be recording parts of that when the tablet comes out. But again, it's that division between testing and training. They can't be in the same process for an accredited body. That's what separates us from a certificate that you might have gotten after someone trains you and they're going over the questions at the end. We get this question too. Why don't you give us the questions that we missed? Right? Because then it helped. Well, because we're not training. We're all about the test. We're all about the accreditation, and that's why.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, well, I want to give a warm applause to our speakers again. Thank you, everybody, for being here today and participating and giving your attention to everybody. And thanks again to the speakers. And that's a wrap. Have a good day.